Needed another reason to remain in your isolated and socially degenerative cocoon? This is the Onion Week in Review, Comics Edition. Sources confirmed Tuesday that the comic book and sci-fi expo Comic-Con was once again marred by BullyCon, an increasingly popular event held in the same convention space. Now in its 5th year, BullyCon reportedly drew more than 125,000 tormentors from across the nation, all of whom were bent on beating up and torturing those attending the many comic book, television, and movie panels at Comic-Con.
When this got started, it was just a couple of friends who wanted to beat the shit out of some Joss Whedon fans, but now there are thousands of us, ruining Walking Dead panels, taunting Harry Potter nerds, and really making some video gamers' lives completely miserable. I don't necessarily need to travel to San Diego to slap a copy of Spider-Man out of some pussy's hands, but there's something really special about coming together with people who dig the same sort of cruelty you do.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. Welcome to the show here. You can join the show if you would like and bring up anything you want to talk about on broadcast radio, podcast, live streaming. We're on a bunch of different places where you can see this program and listen to it. But you can call in at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you here in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
And Matt.
And Bonnie.
Of course, you can take control of the airwaves here, as I said. But there's been some news coming out of Brics. And surprisingly, this hasn't caught much attention. I happened to see a video from RT, Russia Today, reporting on this. Brics, of course, is the other alliance, sort of economic alliance of big countries out there. So you've got
as opposed to NATO.
Maybe NATO, but also like the G7, I think is like that's the US, it's Canada, it's the Japanese, I think Europe, I believe, and then a couple others I'm not thinking of right now. And then BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa for now, although there's something like 24 countries that have applied to join BRICS. So there's a big push.
Are there more on the wait list for BRICS than want to get into G7?
I don't know if you can get into G7. I'm not sure what the rules are on that one, Bonnie, but definitely there are a lot of countries that are interested in joining BRICS to push back against the economic dominance of the United States and just generally the Western world.
Has anybody ever stopped for a second to think about why the United States became so economically dominant in the first place?
Well, it had a lot of freedom for a long time. Not anymore.
Yeah, maybe they want to walk away from it a little bit now because the United States isn't as prosperous as it once was because it's so repressed.
Yeah, I mean, the crypto stuff alone is going to take us back so many years compared to other countries that aren't cracking down on people who want to do things in the cryptocurrency world.
Yeah, that alone.
Right.
I mean, if you look at that, the opportunity cost on that's astronomical. Like not being able to perform in a marketplace is, that's a loss in itself.
Yep. It's going to make people a lot more poor than it would if the government just left us alone.
Yeah, unfortunately, they are cracking down on crypto here, and some countries are welcoming towards people with crypto. Now, I'm not sure where BRICS is at on crypto. There's always rumors like, oh, BRICS is going to adopt Bitcoin. Well, okay, that hasn't happened.
Fat chance.
Yeah, like why would central banks want to go in that direction? It doesn't make any sense.
I really thought Russia was about to do it when everybody was sanctioning them.
Yeah, and that was another thing that kind of got tossed around a little bit, but it never really became anything. Central banks, as long as they exist, are not going to want to get rid of their monopoly on controlling a currency, which is why this news is somewhat surprising coming out of BRICS. And I'll just let RT do the reporting here, but it's them basically confirming the rumors that they've been working on a gold-backed currency
that's interesting.
for the BRICS countries.
The BRICS group is set to introduce a new currency backed by gold, in contrast to the credit-backed US dollar, with countries lining up to join the growing initiative.
This is from RT.
The BRICS countries are planning to introduce a new trading currency which will be backed by gold. More and more countries recently expressed desire to join BRICS.
This is coming from the Russian embassy in Kenya making this announcement. That's what they're citing.
Decision comes a month ahead of scheduled Alliance Summit in Johannesburg, South Africa. 41 countries have since shown their interest in BRICS membership and its new currency implementation. Russia's foreign ministry has
41 countries are interested, so more than I even had thought. Now, not all of them are going to get in.
Are any of them in G7 looking to leave G7 and go into BRICS?
Yeah, I don't think you're allowed to leave G7 and join BRICS. That would be a...
And if these are countries that are already socialist leaning and they're probably already third world and haven't discovered why they're third world in the first place, now they're just going to go... It's a philosophy of parasitism to be socialist in the first place. And these governments haven't discovered that the reason they're so bad off is because of that philosophy in the first place, and now they're just trying to do it on a country level with other countries. You got, 40 countries that want to join these other kind of wonky, economically wonky states that are slightly bigger?
Well, they're economically rising, right? Like China is...
When you have nowhere to go but up, you can always say you're rising.
This is true. I mean, China is obviously one of the biggest economies there, as well as India, which of course India is predicted to pass China by population this year, become the number one most populated country on the planet. And I mean, see, these are pretty big, regardless of their political systems and the amount of socialism that is present within them. And we know China is still considered a communist state. China has, in recent decades, less so under the current president or dictator Xi Jinping, but his predecessors were allowing more economic activity to go on in China, and that has raised the standard of living for a lot of people in that country. So, I mean, there's no doubt that better products have come out of China in the last few decades. You can still get some crap, no doubt about it, but the standards of competition and manufacturing seem to have improved there in the last few decades. So people are being risen out of poverty by even incremental change towards more free markets. We're not talking about free markets, but loosening up restrictions means
if I was a world leader, that would scream to me that what I'm doing in the control department is wrong, and I should release that control and just let people run their own lives.
Well, that's because you're a liberty-minded person, and so of course you're going to think that way. I mean, these are control
they're
freaks.
The ones that are doing okay. The actual leaders in these countries are doing okay. They probably know exactly why their countries are poor, and they know it's because of themselves. And
I don't know. Do you think they know that?
Like
how
give an
aware
example.
are these
Like
people?
Venezuela, how could you not know?
That's what I say. How could you not know?
Yeah,
Well, you're not starving, and everybody in your country is using money to make baskets.
Yeah, you have to wonder about that. I mean, it's easy to attribute evil and malice to these people, and I think that's a fair thing to do. But at the same time, how much of it is true brainwashing? Like, when you look at Kim Jong-un, for instance, the roly-poly dictator there.
Winnie the Pooh, right?
And no, that's who they call Xi Jinping, the Chinese guy. Kim Jong-un
Kim Jong-un's the Korean
from North
guy.
Korea.
Yeah,
the fat, little well-fed, the most well-fed
Probably
guy.
both.
He's well-fed. He's well-fed, but he doesn't poop.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right, because he's a god.
He's a god.
Or whatever, right? He's raised in this environment in which his grandfather and his father are considered the next thing to gods, if not actual gods. And while it's probably true that he's not subjected to the same level of propaganda that the people of that country are, and
who would be giving him the propaganda?
His own family. I don't
So
know.
are they mind washed or are they evil? That's the thing.
That's a great question.
It sounds to me just like that would be propaganda to make people not hate Xi Jinping, whatever his name is, so much.
Kim Jong-un.
Kim Jong-un, yeah, I mixed him up with Ping. But yeah, it sounds to me like that's propaganda to make it like, don't blame him. Yeah, you should definitely blame him.
Yeah, and he has gone to school outside of North Korea, so the odds are good he's not in the same camp as many North Koreans who actually are brainwashed. I think it was like Switzerland or something like that.
Yeah,
wow.
it was like,
he went to Europe.
Like Finland or something.
Yeah, it was somewhere in Europe. He
Why
went to
didn't
college.
They take him for hostage and tell the family, like, your Pooh Bear is going bye-bye.
That's Xi Jinping.
If you don't, let the people go.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting question.
I never heard that he left North Korea.
He did. Yeah, he went to college in Europe. So
just imagine being in his class. Like, wouldn't you not be able to not trip him on the way out of his desk every day?
Beat him up and stuff him into a locker.
I don't know. If it were me, I would want to propagandize him.
Give him a wedgie.
Yeah. I mean, I would not literally bully him, but it would just be so weird.
Because at that point, he would have just been the privileged son of a dictator. He wouldn't have been the dictator Kim Jong-un at that point.
Yeah, when I lived in Ithaca, there was a royal who went to Cornell University there, and he had like a security attaché everyone. And it wasn't like one dude.
You couldn't just hang out with him then.
No, it was like 8 black Chevy Suburbans that went everywhere he went.
Dang. So, I wonder if they're like not allowed to make, like, if Kim Jong-un went to Switzerland to go to school, I wonder if he was like forbidden from making friends or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are all really really interesting questions. But regardless, he probably is aware of a lot of the things that his own countrymen are not aware of, and they keep them, for instance, in North Korea. If you believe the stories, right? Because all you can do is believe what people who've escaped from there have to say about it, because you certainly can't believe the official government press from North Korea. So you just kind of have to,
anywhere.
Yeah, well, of course, but that's all they have in North Korea is the government channels. And so, if you believe them, then the people there are completely brainwashed. They're not allowed to have access to any kind of outside news or information. If you, in fact, do get access to that kind of thing, then they'll probably put you in a prison camp, and also the rest of your family will go to the prison camp because they're known for punishing your family members for the things that you have done, which is a way that they are successful at getting people to not step out of line, because they know that even if they themselves will be willing to face whatever the punishment is, or the prison sentence or the execution or whatever, they know that they'll just snatch up their children and snatch up their wife and their parents, and execute them too.
When I was a chef for many years, and I had a waiter who escaped Czechoslovakia, and he did it on foot with his neighbors. And he comes from a big family full of doctors. And when he escaped the country with his wife and daughter, they forced his entire family to leave their medical practices and put them to work in a shoe factory.
Like his extended family?
Yes. Whoa. Just like people that, were nuclear-ish to him, but, if you were a first cousin, you might be looked at strangely, but the aunts...
So they didn't escape. They were still there.
No, they got stuck behind, because you can't tell your family I'm leaving. Right. You can't tell anybody you're leaving.
Somebody will snitch on you.
Somebody will snitch on you.
Especially if it's just like your uncles you're not really close with or something. Right. And you probably wouldn't expect them to do something to someone like that.
The secret police will show up and they'll nab you because, as people, we are property of politicians. And that's true everywhere in the world. Some of us are just less willing to admit it than others. Even here in the United States, we might be least property of politicians, but we're absolutely still property of politicians.
Yep. Can you just tell them?
It'll continue that way if people don't do something about it.
Can you just tell them this is my house and I'm choosing not to keep paying taxes on it?
No, you can't. They will steal it from you.
They will prove to you that you are their property.
Yep.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny that you guys brought up North Korea or these other countries. I actually have something in the news about them from a couple weeks ago.
Well, I have a question.
So we can talk about them.
Talking about North Korea.
Mm-hmm.
I keep seeing this idea floated around that Yeonmi Park, the woman who escaped North Korea, is just like propaganda. What would be the purpose? I can't even wrap my mind around
propaganda by whom?
They keep saying it's propaganda to get us to go to war with China.
Yeah, I don't know. I have definitely heard some people criticizing her in recent weeks or recent months, and I have not followed it directly. But yeah, has she been saber rattling for China war? I feel like I might
She
have
probably
seen
just talks
something
about how the
that.
Chinese government treated her badly because you escape North Korea, you kind of have to go through China, and lots of women make it there, and then that's the end because they like get sold into sex slavery and things like that. So
Yeah, or they'll get taken back to North Korea by the Chinese government.
I don't know if she's been saying like let's go to war, but it could also be just that I want to know if either of you had any more insight than I do, but it doesn't sound
All I know about that whole relationship is that traditionally China has looked at North Korea as an annoying kid brother, like a really annoying kid brother, and tries to stay away from it as much as it can. But they are birds of a feather, and that's how it's going to be when you're that close to each other. And it's hard to believe that China is a freer country than North Korea.
Yeah. I mean, if you get caught by the Chinese government and you're escaping from North Korea, you kind of have to like go, I guess it's across some water and then into the mainland of China. Well, if you get caught by the Chinese government, they could send you back.
They could.
And they have. Like, why you wouldn't do that if you were, like this great country that was, taking
I have this like fantasy, and I hope it's true. I hope there's several dozen people in North Korea that are listening to Free Talk Live on a regular basis on like a clandestine, like shortwave radio or something.
That'd be awesome.
Some shortwave radio from the 50s that they can power up. And
I have no idea if we're on any shortwave stations at this time, but that is a thing that people have done, is dropped radios into North Korea to allow people to tune into channels from South Korea or the American government or whoever it is that's transmitting into the country. Because in North Korea, you can get a radio, but it's locked onto the official state channel. So like, you can turn it on, you can turn it off. You can turn it up and down as far as the volume, but there's no tuning dial.
I bet they have a permit system for it too. Like you need to have it inspected.
Get a radio
once in a
permit?
while.
Yeah, that could be.
You can't even listen to it unless it's inspected by a state inspector for hacking. Could you imagine being in? I'd immediately be tearing it apart, that radio, and trying to take any like blocks out of it and stuff.
Yeah, well, that's probably going to land you in a prison if they catch you.
Can't you go to prison for listening to K-pop there?
Yeah, if you have any kind of South Korean media, you will be punished. In North Korea. Absolutely.
I think in North Korea the women have like 7 hairstyles to choose from, and the men have like 3.
Yeah, you have to basically wear the hairstyle of the great leader,
right?
or whatever it is he's approved of.
How freakish!
Yeah,
it's
a wild. Whenever you start researching North Korea, it's just absolutely a wild.
Well, the military
thing.
does it, right? The U.S. military does that. They bring everybody in the military. They immediately shave all their heads and make them all look the same.
Yeah, exactly.
You take away your individuality.
Every time I hear about something that other people don't have the freedom to do, and I do, it just makes me like almost cry.
Yeah, it would be very sad to find out that Yeonmi Park, who has been an ostensible libertarian for some time now,
she's been to our house, right?
No,
she wasn't the one that went to the CAC.
The Keene Activist Center? No, I don't think so. There were some people from Liberty in North Korea that came here, and they did give a presentation to the libertarians here in Keene, and they also, I think, did one at the library in
Renee
town.
told me about it. I thought for sure she said that was Yeonmi Park.
No, Yeonmi Park was not in that group, but Renee did meet Yeonmi Park at a libertarian event in Washington, D.C.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of.
So, like I said, if you know more about what Yeonmi Park has been allegedly saying in regards to a potential invasion of China, I mean, that would be a real sad thing to learn about. I have not yet seen the actual evidence for this particular claim. And, if you're a libertarian, you shouldn't be rattling the saber for any kind of invasion anywhere. You should know that that's not going to actually make life better for the people in those countries. And certainly, getting those people out and assisting with those people getting out, I support, which is why I donated on a monthly basis to Liberty in North Korea, which is a group that does just that they find out about people who are, trying to escape or have escaped, and they provide whatever kind of assistance that they can. So helping the people escape through China, for instance, and get them to South Korea, because that's the challenge, is you have to escape from North Korea into China and then escape from China into South Korea. So it's a really long procedure to get out from, or at least the standard way of doing things would be to go that way. I'm sure there's other ways of doing it that are more risky. For instance, like trying to leave North Korea and just go straight into South Korea without stopping in China probably involves more risk of getting detected by the North Koreans.
Like guards at that, what do they call it? The
The demilitarized zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely probably cannot easily go through that way.
I have another word for it, too. It's like, not ground zero, but something like that.
I don't know what that would be. They call it the DMZ, which is
DMZ,
that's
what I'm
the
thinking.
shorthand or whatever.
Demilitarized zone?
Correct,
oh, okay.
So we can come back to North Korea in a moment, but what started this whole conversation about these tyrannical nations was the discussion about Brics, which is set to, according to RT, which is a pretty reliable news source, set to introduce a currency backed by gold.
It stated that if African states show enthusiasm, the group's expansion may also be on a Russia-Africa summit's agenda in the end of July. As of now, the BRICS group remains comprised of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. Former statistician general of South Africa, Pali Lehola, says the gold-backed currency will facilitate the advancement of developing countries.
Gold banks currency?
Gold backed.
Oh.
So an actual currency backed by gold, which hasn't existed on this planet in any kind of, governmental sense in
Since Nixon.
50 years, right? Since Nixon wiped it out here in the United States.
Avoiding using the gold standard. We have gone for almost 45 years now, since 1980 when this was dropped.
This is Pali Lehola, who is the former South African statistician general, speaking here.
And we have seen the consequences, particularly of this, to the developing countries, when the dollar was adopted as a standard and gold not as such. Yet, against that, there's been accumulation of gold in the developing world. South Africa had a much stronger currency when the gold standard was still in force. By going the gold standard by many countries, that many African countries, of course, have, this will be of great benefit to strengthening the currency, the single currency that is backed by gold.
What part of the government is he?
He is a former statistician from the South African government.
It will facilitate development because, after all, currency is the quantity of material things that societies have. If you use another currency based on material wealth or material things you don't have, it means that you are at the mercy of that country, and and they will charge commissions and the like.
Okay, so that's the report from RT that they are looking at introducing a new currency or announcing that they're introducing a new currency backed by gold, which is a huge thing. If this actually does come to pass, there's been a lot of talk about this in over the years, but this is the first story that I've really seen that it sounds like it's happening. It sounds like they're going to do this. Now, of course, the first question is, for how long will it be backed by gold? Because you can't trust the governments of the world to honor their agreements. You can't trust them to
leave it in Fort Knox.
Well, yeah, we don't know what's in Fort Knox. You can't, and they're not going to be audited anytime soon. The theory is, of course, that there is no gold in Fort Knox. But with regards to this BRICS currency, if they do launch this thing, this will be a huge hit to the dominance of the dollar on a world stage, right? So right now the dollar is the world reserve currency. It still is, even though it has been losing its reserve status. It hasn't quite lost it yet, but the number of countries that are relying on the dollar in their reserves has been going down as far as they've been jettisoning some of their dollar holdings over recent years. The percentage of central banks that have dollar holdings, or at least the amount of those dollar holdings, has been going down. And so there's a good chance that if there's an actual gold-backed currency that is trustworthy, at least for a time, you're going to see a lot more of these countries start to rely on that gold-backed currency
and people will
instead
dump
of the
their
dollar. There's more coming up. Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join today.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. Twitter has threatened to sue rival Meta over its new Threads app, according to a media report. Threads has been downloaded now more than 30 million times, less than 24 hours after it was launched. FSN Silicon Valley correspondent Ira Spitzer reports.
In a letter published by multiple media outlets, Twitter's lawyers accused Meta of using trade secrets to build the microblogging platform Threads. Meta's new platform appears to have capitalized on user dissatisfaction with Twitter since polarizing billionaire Elon Musk bought the company last year and instituted a series of chaotic changes. One competitive advantage that Meta has over Twitter and other would-be competitors is that Threads accounts are linked to Instagram, a platform that already has more than 1 billion users.
Secret talks between the US and Russia have taken place to try and end the war in Ukraine, according to a US media outlet. NBC News is reporting that the group consisted of former senior US national security officials and Russian officials, including Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, and that they met in New York in April. They reportedly discussed how to end the war in Ukraine and what to do about territory captured by Russia during the conflict. An aide of former US President Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty in a Miami federal court in the classified documents case. Walt Nauter faces charges that he helped his former boss hide top-secret documents that were taken from the White House and stored in Trump's private residences. FSN's Benji Hire reports.
Walt Nauter made his initial court appearance alongside Mr. Trump last month when the frontrunner for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination pleaded not guilty to 37 criminal counts for allegedly retaining national security documents and obstructing justice. Nauter, though, lacking a lawyer licensed to practice in Florida, was not arraigned that day, and his arraignment was postponed for a second time later in June. He's accused of 6 counts of conspiracy to obstruct justice, false statements, and withholding and concealing documents.
Americans may want to start thinking twice about drinking water from the faucet. A new government study found that toxic forever chemicals may be lurking in nearly half of all US tap water, as FSN's Tony Waterman reports.
Researchers from the U.S. Geological Survey collected more than 700 water samples over a 5-year period from across the country, including from both private wells and public supply tap water. They found that about 45% of those samples contained at least one PFAS, more commonly known as forever chemicals because they never break down in the human body or in the environment.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. We're talking about Brics. The Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa alliance that is being applied to by dozens of countries. Now, they're going to have a Brics summit. They have an annual meeting that is happening in South Africa. I believe it's coming up later this summer.
They can't add anyone else or else I'll have to change the name.
Yeah, you do have to wonder if they're going to keep expanding the acronym or just keep it as Brics and
like
then
LGBT or they
Brics
put Brics Plus, yeah.
Brics Plus, yeah. I actually think they already have a Brics Plus for some sort of economic purposes. But anyway, the alliance is talking about or announcing, according to RT, the report that we played here tonight, they're set, quote, according to RT, quote, set to introduce a new currency backed by gold. So there's been some talk about this for some time. And now it looks like it's going to happen. Now, They say the decision is coming a month ahead of the bloc's summit in Johannesburg. So it sounds like it's been decided at what time this is going to happen, how long it will take for this new gold-backed currency to come out. I don't know what those details are, but I imagine we're going to learn sooner rather than later. Now, of course, cryptocurrency is still out there on the scene. It is still something to be contended with. It is a $1+ trillion market cap at the moment. Actually, probably should get an update on exactly what the current market cap is for.
Bitcoin went to 31,000 the other day, but I didn't look
It did.
today.
It's down a bit. A Bitcoin currently at about 30,000. 30,047 is the price of one Bitcoin at the moment. The current market cap for all of the noteworthy cryptocurrencies combined is $1.2 trillion. Of that, Bitcoin is about 580 billion. And that means Bitcoin's what they call dominance is at 48.1%. So of that 1.2 trillion, Bitcoin's about 48% of that value. Ethereum, which is the number 2 cryptocurrency, is 18.4%. And then the rest of them make up the remaining, whatever that is.
Wasn't Ethereum qualified as a security by...
Yeah,
whatever?
the SEC is essentially announcing that every cryptocurrency, with the exception of Bitcoin, according to them, is a security.
I don't understand how they're arriving at that.
No,
though.
it doesn't make any sense, but that's what they're doing.
I could see what their argument for proof of stake. If you have a stake in something, then it's a stock, so it's a security.
Ethereum is now a proof of stake coin. They switched from proof of work to proof of stake at some point last year, I think it was. So they've changed how they do their system. And so, we've been talking a lot about cryptocurrency over the years. You can't trust Brics to keep their new currency that they're going to come out with backed by gold. You just can't. At some point, it may be backed by gold in the beginning, and that may be what it takes for them to take down the dollar. But once they take down the dollar and they get their gold-backed currency taken on by a bunch of central banks around the planet, at what point will they just decide to unback their currency by gold, or only half back it by gold, or whatever it is that the next move is going to be? Meanwhile, cryptocurrency is still going to be out there, still going to be attracting new users.
And it's like you can look right at it instead of wondering.
Well, when you say look right at it, you mean you can look at the code. It's open source. You can check the code out. You can make sure it does what it says it's going to do. And that is definitely true when it comes to Dash, which is digital cash. Dash is a cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. You look at the top 100 cryptocurrencies out there right now, almost none of them are actually interested in being used as a currency. There are a few, and Dash is one of those elite few. In fact, it's been doing this for a very, very long time. Dash was not only one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, like it's one of the first 15 cryptocurrencies that has ever existed.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Dash was also the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. In fact, every month, 10% of the mining rewards from the Dash miners goes into a treasury, and then anybody that has one whole Dash, which right now is only like $35, I think, for one Dash. I haven't checked the price in a few days, but it's somewhere in that mid-30s range. If you got one Dash, you can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. They will vet those proposals. They'll decide which ones move forward. They vote on them. And then they get funded by the Treasury. In fact, that's exactly how we got this sponsorship. That's how the Dash programmers get paid every month to keep improving on Dash. And nowadays, these decentralized autonomous organizations are plentiful. They're all over the place. There's one for Ross Ulbricht. There's one for Julian Assange. There's all kinds of DAOs out there. Dash did it first. They paved the way for DAOs by doing it almost a decade ago at this point. Dash is one of the oldest cryptos. It's widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get. It's easy to use Dash. And you can start by learning more at Dash.org. And thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. You can visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. That is Dash.org.
What does it mean that there's a DAO for Ross Ulbricht?
They do fundraising, as I understand it. I mean, I haven't paid close attention to everything that they're doing, but I think the what they call it, I don't know if it's the Free Ross DAO. I'm not sure the exact name of it, but you've probably heard that Ross Ulbricht has created artwork while he was in prison. I believe that the Dash or the Ross Ulbricht DAO has something to do with that
Selling it for
artwork.
them?
I don't know if they're selling it for him.
Turned it into NFTs. That's what it was.
They may be doing something like that. They may be bidding on that as a group to try to up the bids or something. Again, I don't follow it closely, but I know that they exist, right? I can't use cryptocurrency, so it's hard for me to spend a whole lot of time doing deep research on something that I can't actually get into. But I know the Julian Assange one is fundraising for lawyers and things like that. So it's anyway, there you go. I hope that answered your question as well as I could. But look into it. I'm sure that you can learn more about it. And you can learn more about Dash at dash.org. Let's go to the phones here. Gigi is on the line in South Carolina. Gigi, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I haven't called the show in for quite a few weeks.
Welcome.
And there are a few things I would like to get off my chest.
Okay.
First of all, mega congrats to Nikki on her recent beautiful marriage. She and her husband should only have years of excellent health and
he doesn't deserve her, that guy.
for one another. I adore that woman. She is sharp and sweet and
She didn't
bright.
hear it.
Secondly,
Gigi,
Matt is here.
Her husband is actually hosting tonight. Matt, our co-host, is Nikki's husband.
well, as they say in Hebrew, Matthew, mazel tov.
Mazel tov, l'chaim. Thank you.
You're so cute. I love your wife. She is smart and always a lady on the phone.
Nah, she's all right.
Yeah, you'll keep her for a while.
Yeah, she does good.
Indeed.
And
All right,
my
Gigi,
next
what else?
thing is, I was listening to something so interesting on a radio news program a couple of days ago. I'm a news junkie like the captain, and it was quite eye-opening. The journalist that was hosting the program, I don't remember the gentleman's name, was saying something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing, of how years ago Nixon and Kissinger were ready to trash Daniel Ellsberg for being a traitor, getting his tuchus thrown in jail, and he was seen as a traitor because of not being transparent by our illustrious government with the Pentagon Papers. And
Daniel
once the
Ellsberg was the
Washington
journalist. Gigi, you have to explain here. Daniel Ellsberg was the journalist in the 1970s, I think, who went public with the Pentagon Papers, which revealed what was it about was that the Vietnam War? What was the Pentagon Papers covering? I'm a little rusty on that. Gigi, did we lose you?
Yep. We're just hearing fuzz from her line.
Do you remember, Matt, Pentagon Papers? Which
I
that
am
one was?
not sure what. I should know that because my dad was addicted to that whole story too, and I
Yeah.
learned about it my whole life. And I think I get overdrowned in it by my dad, so I didn't pay attention anymore.
The Pentagon Papers were officially titled The Report of the Office of the Secretary of Defense Vietnam Task Force, is a history of the United States political and military involvement in Vietnam from 1945 to 1967. And the report was commissioned by Secretary of Defense in 1967. In June of 1971, small portions of the report were leaked to the press and widely distributed. The papers were first brought to the public's attention on the front page of the New York Times in 1971. The Nixon administration obtained a restraining order to stop the publication of the papers, but the Times appealed to the Supreme Court, which dissolved the restraining order and allowed their publication. So this was like a big reveal. And it was Daniel Ellsberg, who passed away recently, if I recall correctly. He had been the main journalist that just kind of the name was on this release, and he got a lot of attention, both I'm sure negative from the government people and positive.
And he got arrested, like Gigi was saying?
I don't know, Gigi. Are you still with us, Gigi? Did we lose you? I think we lost her.
I think we still lost her.
She's gone. Pentagon Papers revealed the U.S. had secretly enlarged the scope of its actions in the Vietnam War with coastal raids on North Vietnam and Marine Corps attacks, none of which were reported in the mainstream media. For his disclosure of the Pentagon Papers, Ellsberg was initially charged with conspiracy, espionage, and theft of government property. Those charges were later dismissed after prosecutors investigating the Watergate scandal discovered that staff members in the Nixon White House had ordered the so-called White House plumbers to engage in unlawful efforts to discredit Ellsberg.
The so-called White House plumbers?
Yeah, this is a group I'm not familiar with.
Maybe they were the ones that brought cocaine into the White House the other day.
Could very well be.
They were in the storage closet looking for a wrench.
So there you go. That's a little bit about the Pentagon Papers. Let's go to this caller. Caller, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Again, my house number pooped out on me. Please excuse me.
Hi,
I'm
Gigi.
calling on my husband's cell phone, but I was listening to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for finishing my thought. That's why I adore you, because you think like me. And so now we have another individual, Julian Assange and Edward Snowden, both seen as traitors, just like Daniel Ellsberg was. Are we going to learn that in 25 to 50 years they will be seen as heroes for freedom of the press?
I hope so.
They are.
Too late. They already are.
Yeah.
And I have one more thing I would like to make a comment on, if you would permit me the time. Thank you for the courtesy. Many Sunday nights ago, I was listening to your program, as I generally do with my husband on Sunday evening. We enjoy the program thoroughly. And we especially value how every one of the hosts always permit, even when someone is creepy, obnoxious, and rude, their opportunity to voice an opinion, make a statement, or perhaps a combination thereof. You guys uphold that principle big time. More power to all of you. However, it has been my experience listening to the program on Sunday nights in particular, and this happened to have been when Nikki and Matthew were not present because they were on their honeymoon, and Aria, a lovely, intelligent, highly articulate lady, was substituting that night and talking about different elements of the festival that occurred, and how wonderful it was to hear all of that she was outlining for us listeners. Once again, Mr. Olson from New Mexico called in, and in my opinion, this is just one lady's opinion, his vocabulary and his choice of verbiage was vulgar, ungentlemanlike, and nothing to contribute whatsoever, making comments about, Aria, why don't you, I'm paraphrasing Mr. Olson, why don't you remove your top and bra and do the show, do the broadcast topless?
Oh, wow.
I got to tell you, everybody, that does not contribute to anything productive. I think you would agree, but I understand how you...
It's worth pointing out that Arya has done the show topless a number of times, but yes, certainly his call was uncalled for.
To say that is so unnecessary.
Yeah.
If Arya wants to do that, let it be Arya's individual choice.
I agree. Thank you, Gigi, for the call tonight. And by the way, if you want to write to Arya, she has an address posted over at her website, which is Aria DiMezzo. That's spelled AriaDimezzo.com. She's in federal prison at the moment, and I'm sure she would appreciate hearing from anybody who wants to reach out. The address is right there at the top of her website, as well as information about how to contribute to her commissary. Apparently, she's had quite a few very generous donations to the commissary account. So thank you, Gigi, for the call tonight. We appreciate it.
What a class act Gigi is, huh?
She's a nice lady, for sure.
Yeah, anytime I do anything and then one of the creepier male callers calls in and says, like, oh, Bonnie, it's so cute when you do that thing, or whatever, it makes me want to do the opposite.
Right.
To not be cute. That's impossible.
Yeah, I'll just stop being
Go put
cute.
tons of clothes on. Do you think Arya can hear the show?
No.
She can't hear the show?
Definitely not. There is some kind of federal podcast app, apparently. Like, not every prison has these. I don't think Arya's, what they call this, camp. So there's not even like a fence at this particular location. I don't think they have the tablets. I believe Ross Ulbricht's prison, wherever he is, I think in Arizona, or I'm not sure where they've got him right now, but they've got these tablets, and then on these federal tablets, which obviously are not like as free as your typical tablet, right? Like it'll be only certain prison approved apps that are on there, but they do have some sort of podcast app. Free Talk Live is not part of that app, and I don't expect we'll ever be approved for that particular app. The only
Have
way
you ever requested?
I tried to reach out to Securus, which is the company that is running this particular system, and they have not gotten back to me. So I'm not going to.
When was that?
A few months back, somebody asked me to go and reach out. The prisoners themselves have asked Securus for adding Free Talk Live, and they've gotten absolutely nowhere. And of course, why would Free Talk Live be added to a federal podcast app? If you are in prison, you can only get Free Talk Live on broadcast radio. That's the only way to listen in prison.
Only problem with that with Aria
area.
is it's not in Aria's area.
It is not in. I don't think we're on anywhere in Massachusetts at this time.
Oh, wow.
So sorry about that. So, yeah,
Boo.
It's a bummer. Anyway, AriaDemezzo.com. You can write to her there, and she definitely appreciates hearing from folks.
What about Tucson, Arizona?
What about it?
Are we on the radio in Tucson, Arizona?
No, not at this time. Not that I'm aware of. So we were talking about North Korea. That happened to come up in the discussion about Brics. But just to kind of round out the Brics discussion, it sounds like they're going to do this thing with a gold-backed currency, which would be amazing. Now, it's not clear whether
they'd probably pretty well trounce the U.S. dollar if they
That's the idea. And I think that is what they are intending to do, is to give the countries of the world another alternative that's actually worth something that's actually backed.
I doubt that their motivations are charitable or...
They want to take down the U.S. government's dominance. I mean, that's what I think the goal is here, ultimately.
My question would be, will the people who live in those Brics countries be forced to turn in any gold that they own?
Good question. We know that one of the African gold mining nations is mandating that 20% of the gold miners take, whatever it is that they mine out of the earth, has to go to the government.
20%.
20%.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's insane.
That's we get taxed more than that, but it's so in your face that's like straight up just obvious theft.
Of course that's what it is.
That's where you mining, you back every available dump truck up to the mine, and you take all that mud wash that's not gold, and you take 20% of that and you dump it at the footsteps of the Capitol building in that country.
Now, what's not clear yet about this particular Brics gold-backed currency is, will this currency just be for the use of governments? Meaning that, is it going to be for like governmental trading between one another, governmental, we're going to buy your currency and hold it as an asset on the central bank, right? Like that kind of thing. Or is it going to be something that the actual people of these countries can get their hands on? I suspect it's going to be the former and not the latter, but it's too early to say at this point whether this is going to be sort of internal to those governments or external to the people of these places. Obviously, it would be best if it was something that people could get their hands on that's actually backed by gold. Unfortunately, we're not to the point where the average person is interested in cryptocurrency yet. And again, I would not trust this particular currency to be backed by gold for more than 10 years or something like that. But either way, it is interesting to see this thing hitting the scene, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens to the dominance of the U.S. dollar as a result of that. I personally am looking forward to seeing the dollar fail. I understand that is not necessarily good news for people who hold dollars. Mm-hmm. You've got time, though, as Aaron Day, the Republican presidential candidate, who's the only one that actually is pro-liberty, is a free stater. As he points out, the transition is not complete yet into the CBDC or the central bank digital currency. They haven't actually gone through with that yet in the United States. So you do have time to protect yourself by getting out of the dollar or the euro or whatever central bank currency it is that you're saddled with wherever you live.
You also have time to get to a place where you have a community. So if Walmart suddenly is out of stock of everything, you can still survive. You shouldn't live in a place where you don't know any of your neighbors and stuff like that.
That's good advice as well, Bonnie. If you are a libertarian, you ought to get to New Hampshire. That is some are calling it the libertarian homeland. This is a place where you can actually have a community of freedom-minded people that you can do trades with in gold, that you can do trades with in cryptocurrency. Right now, that exists today.
Yep.
In fact, you just cooked up some pork chops here tonight that we got from Jay Noon.
Yep, and I bought them with
I think we
Bitcoin.
Can talk about this because he talks about these things on the air, that you paid with cryptocurrency to buy these pork chops, and they were absolutely fantastic and raised by free stater types, and the government basically didn't touch these pigs.
Yep.
So
he gives them less, dangerous things to eat, dangerous for humans. Like he doesn't feed his pigs soy.
They forage in the woods too. Like he opens up big plots of land in the woods for them, so they go around eating acorns and stuff like that. They're real happy pigs. He had a hard time finding pigs. I think this happened to Neil and Emily back in the day when they started Bardo too. They had a hard time finding pigs that had hooves that would be appropriate for living in the dirt. Because pigs over the years have been bred to stand on concrete for the entirety of their lives.
Wow.
So the pigs that are bred to live on concrete can't get around in the dirt.
Wow. That's not even how I picture like the average pig farm. I picture it like a big backyard with mud, I guess.
It's not. It's a big cement pole barn.
That sucks.
That's awful.
It's like prison.
Yeah, so having this good meat to fall back on from places like Bardo and from Jay, that's just fantastic.
These people literally feed this Liberty community.
They do, and
incredible.
and it'd be great if there was even more people like that planting big gardens, things like that. And we're literally going Galt here. This is Galt's Gulch from Atlas Shrugged. This is the true Galt's Gulch.
What is that? Can you describe what that is?
Galt's Gulch is where all the productive people disappeared to as the government became more and more domineering in the book Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. So when that happened, and it was just the government was making it impossible for anybody who was self-made to exist, they disappeared and took their goods and services and muscle and ability to a secret location in Colorado and lived there, and it was called Galt's Gulch.
Yeah, nothing can help us more than more freedom-minded people than getting here, and it helps you, right? Like when you join a community of like-minded people that already is doing the things that you dream about, right? Like being able to buy things with gold, silver, cryptocurrency, trading with other freedom-minded individuals, kind of keeping it in the family, so to speak, with the marketplace. We see this going on all the time here in New Hampshire. They have what they call Market Day. That happens regularly in different areas of the state, at least once a month, I think, in many areas of the state. People come together. They bring the things that they do or the things that they make, their crafts or their homemade, whatever, and the beef and you name it, mushrooms or whatever it is. And they buy and they sell these things. They hang out for a day, and some people bring hot food to sell. Some people bringing hot tea. Some people
I used to sell salsa.
Doing massages. I mean, there's all kinds of services that are available.
And most people prefer you to not pay them in dirty fiat.
That's true. Some will sometimes accept it, but usually people are buying things with the alternatives, and that's really cool. And the more people that we can get together here, the larger that economy can be, the stronger this sort of alternative economy, the alternative to the dollar, can be. I mean, that's just... The bigger we get, the more effective we become, the more we're able to bring other local business owners on board with things like accepting cryptocurrency, because we actually have people who are willing to spend it.
Right.
So, there's more coming up here. I would recommend checking out the Free State Project if you're a libertarian or a voluntarist. Hour 2's coming up. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes to vote on. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by the Treasury. In fact, that's exactly how we got this sponsorship. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. Twitter has threatened to sue rival Meta over its new Threads app, according to a media report. Threads has been downloaded now more than 30 million times, less than 24 hours after it was launched. FSN Silicon Valley correspondent Ira Spitzer reports.
In a letter published by multiple media outlets, Twitter's lawyers accused Meta of using trade secrets to build the microblogging platform Threads. Meta's new platform appears to have capitalized on user dissatisfaction with Twitter since polarizing billionaire Elon Musk bought the company last year and instituted a series of chaotic changes. One competitive advantage that Meta has over Twitter and other would-be competitors is that Threads accounts are linked to Instagram, a platform that already has more than 1 billion users.
Secret talks between the US and Russia have taken place to try and end the war in Ukraine, according to a US media outlet. NBC News is reporting that the group consisted of former senior US national security officials and Russian officials, including Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, and that they met in New York in April. They reportedly discussed how to end the war in Ukraine and what to do about territory captured by Russia during the conflict. An aide of former US President Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty in a Miami federal court in the classified documents case. Walt Nauter faces charges that he helped his former boss hide top-secret documents that were taken from the White House and stored in Trump's private residences. FSN's Benji Hire reports.
Walt Nauter made his initial court appearance alongside Mr. Trump last month when the frontrunner for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination pleaded not guilty to 37 criminal counts for allegedly retaining national security documents and obstructing justice. Nauter, though, lacking a lawyer licensed to practice in Florida, was not arraigned that day, and his arraignment was postponed for a second time later in June. He's accused of 6 counts of conspiracy to obstruct justice, false statements, and withholding and concealing documents.
Americans may want to start thinking twice about drinking water from the faucet. A new government study found that toxic forever chemicals may be lurking in nearly half of all US tap water, as FSN's Tony Waterman reports.
Researchers from the U.S. Geological Survey collected more than 700 water samples over a 5-year period from across the country, including from both private wells and public supply tap water. They found that about 45% of those samples contained at least one PFAS, more commonly known as forever chemicals because they never break down in the human body or in the environment.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, some perspective on the latest violence in the Middle East. Thousands of people have attended the funerals of 12 Palestinians killed during an Israeli military operation against a refugee camp in Jenin, while in Israel itself an investigation continues into an attack on a shopping district of Tel Aviv by a car that rammed pedestrians, injuring 8. Today, is it even possible to talk about a peace process given that no efforts are being made to advance one? Emily Hilton is UK Director of Diaspora Alliance, an international organisation aimed at combating anti-Semitism and its politicisation.
What is happening on the ground in Palestine and Israel is basically a situation where there is no motivation for Israel to end its occupation. The reality on the ground has shifted so much that we now have a situation where settlements are basically permanent structures. Whilst there is obviously sort of a dramatic shift to the right with this government, you've seen sort of the reality of occupation has been in place for over 56 years. I would hope that people would see the real need and urgency of not allowing sort of even further drift in sort of far-right extremism, which has sort of taken hold of the Israeli government. However, so far, we're yet to see any of that accountability really be put into action.
And she points to new legislative moves in the UK to stop public bodies from boycotting foreign countries, as one example of evaporating accountability for the Israeli government's actions. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, Twitter has threatened to sue rival Meta over its new Threads app, according to media reports. Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko has claimed that the Wagner mercenaries chief Yevgeny Prigozhin is still in Russia, and an aide of former US President Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty in a Miami federal court in the classified documents case. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
A new report released this week has found that nearly 3/4 of sleepaway campers' parents are currently using their children's time away from home to take the first steps towards filing for divorce.
With 46% of campers' moms currently staying with their sisters while they try to figure it out, and 38% of campers' dads sleeping on the living room couch and staring at the ceiling for hours before falling asleep.
Most campers are, at this precise moment, wholly unaware that their fathers are looking for temporary sublets and are experiencing a level of carefree, joyful buoyancy that experts say they will never feel again.
The majority of campers currently have, on average, 16 days until their lives come crashing down around them, at which point their parents will pick them up from camp, drive them to a restaurant, and then break the news that while they'll always be a family, they won't be living together anymore.
I love camp this year. It's so much fun. Mom sent me so many care packages. Dad even sent one. It's awesome.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and we're kicking off the second hour of the program. Phones are open, as always, if you want to join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can join us online anytime you want. Just head on over to freetalklive.com. We do have our own social media site. Apparently, in the news today, there's some talk about Elon Musk suing Meta, the company formerly known as Facebook. He's apparently sent a letter to Mark Zuckerberg claiming that he believes that Meta has engaged in, quote, systematic, willful, and unlawful misappropriation of Twitter's trade secrets and other intellectual property. Now, I don't know if there's any basis for this because, like, what is it that Twitter does that's so special, right? Like, it's just a social media platform where you post microblogs, as I think they're called, and you can share them. I mean, essentially, Mastodon does the exact same thing. And I suspect Twitter isn't suing Mastodon because Mastodon barely exists as an organization. You know, it's just an open source project, whereas obviously Meta has billions and billions of dollars. So I presume that's what's going on here. If you want to try out Mastodon, we do have our own server. You can go to social.freetalklive.com. You can sign up there. And unlike Meta and Twitter, we don't have any kind of real serious rules on what you can and can't post. There are a couple rules. One of them is we don't want spam. So there's actually a question that you have to ask or that you have to answer to get into the server, which just simply asks you, you know, why are you here? How did you find us? Why are you here? That kind of thing. And if you give an answer that makes you sound like a human being instead of a spam bot, then you'll get in. The only other rule is no snitching. If you don't like what somebody says, then just leave them alone and hit the block button. Don't report their post to us. We don't care if you don't like it, because you're free to post your opinions over at social.freetalklive.com. Let's go to your phone calls here. Pete is in Iowa. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Pete.
Hey, how's it going?
What's on your mind?
So I was calling today just to talk about the pork chops that Bonnie had made, and I wanted to launch the first meme coin on Dash Digital Cash Network.
I don't think you can do that, at least not that I'm aware. I'm pretty sure Dash doesn't have tokens.
I know, so it doesn't have an EVM capability to launch a token on it.
No,
I guess it wouldn't,
as far as I know, it does not have that.
So I did misspeak. It wouldn't be on the actual Dash network, but it would be in a liquidity pool paired to Dash.
Okay.
So it would directly support it.
Okay. So what are you going to call it?
Bonnie's Pork Chops Free Talk Live.
All right. Well, let us know when it gets listed on CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap.
I'll get it on there ASAP, and I'll call you guys back.
We look forward to it.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for the call tonight. Yeah, I think that realistically, obviously he's joking, but realistically, you don't want to back your cryptocurrency with pork chops because, well, they'll go bad very quickly. And, you don't want to back your cryptocurrency with bananas. You don't want to back it with all kinds of different things that can spoil. You want to use, well, I think precious metals are a pretty good backing for a cryptocurrency.
I'm thinking that's probably what Brics is going to end up doing. They'll break. That's how they're going to roll out their CBDC, and their CBDC will be backed by whatever gold holdings they say they have.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to be rolled into a CBDC. That is an excellent question. I know China's already got one.
Yeah,
China already has a CBDC. So that's what makes me think that this is not going to be for the people. This, for those just tuning in, we're talking about the Brics gold-backed currency project that apparently is moving forward to some extent. We don't know when and where this is going to happen, but I don't think China is going to allow its people to get their hands on an actual gold-backed currency. So that's why I suspect that this is just going to be for nation states.
Yeah, government should be powerful. People should be powerless.
This is what they believe.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's Ian, Matt, and Bonnie here in the studio tonight. Let's talk to Ricky. He's in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Go ahead, Ricky.
Thank you there, Brother Ian. Brother Matt, pleasure to meet you.
What's on your mind tonight? Go ahead.
Well, Miss Bonnie, good evening.
Hello.
Well, I was thinking about this, and you read my mind kind of, because I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about this, and I did say it on the air that last week's show, that this week's show with Miss Bonnie as host would be better, and it was. And I have a couple observations, if I may.
Thank you.
Now, of that night, the only regular callers that called was me, Kadu, actually had a tie into my call, and Sarah, who did whatever she did. The regulars are gone. You know what I say? Good. Because I tell you what was there, a bunch of new, fresh callers. Now, I have serious issue with one of the regulars. I don't think I'm even going to dignify his name, but he had certain comments to make to the captain concerning Miss Bonnie, and he's out of line. Because I think there's something funny going on with this, and you don't need these, quote, regular callers. Because I think that
I agree. I totally agree, and I definitely
think that's scaring people off.
I definitely appreciate it when we get new callers or irregular callers or whatever people that we don't hear from often.
But I liked that guy from Utah yesterday. Just kind of going off on some of the conspiracy type things he
Plus, it was
believes in.
cool, the guy that didn't even know where you guys were at.
Well, I mean, if you're new to the show, you don't necessarily know.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, I did want to say that, and I don't screw it. I don't like Major Payne. I really don't. I don't like it for a million reasons. I'm not going to get in tonight. It's going to come, but you don't need him.
He said something bad about me to Captain?
He did. If I remember correctly, it was Captain was on. I only caught part of it.
It sounds like we got ourselves a caller beef here.
Caller beef.
Well, no, he was just he was angry, and he was saying,
he probably got a little drunk.
I can say this, but that girl, I can't this and that. I don't want to sound like that Ricky guy. I swear. Whatever.
Okay.
But he's not very good. He's not a great caller.
Thank you for the input. Did you have anything else you were calling about?
Yeah,
tonight?
I did actually. And I'm looking forward to the next show, and I think as it's going, Wednesday nights are going to be one of my favorites. But no doubt, I love it with the fresh callers, and I noticed you sounded like a certain famous host I know, but it's going to get even better as time goes on.
She sounded like a famous host?
Yeah, Mark said that I have a terrible voice for radio, and so do all women.
That's an awful thing to say.
You sounded identical to Brother Ian throughout the whole show, Miss Bonnie.
Who does she sound like that's famous to you, Ricky?
That was you. I was kind of making a joke, Ian.
Oh, I thought you said Bonnie sounded like someone famous.
Yeah, you.
Oh, okay. No, I don't think so.
Here's the one comment I want to make. That being said, I was listening, and, I wanted to say thank you to you, Miss Bonnie, for being respectful the past 2 nights when you announced me. But if I used the word cute and that sounded like creepy, it wasn't meant that way. It was meant very affectionately.
I don't just mean you. There is a guy, and I won't say his name.
You didn't mean me. I'm sorry.
She said she didn't just mean you.
Well, okay.
Well, if you keep calling me Ricky from the Commonwealth, I'll love you for it. Hopefully that's all right. But go ahead.
That might have came off as meaner than I meant. There was a way creepier guy that lived in Florida that would call in just to say something again, Bonnie. I love your voice.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
And it was so creepy.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Ricky, for the call tonight, man. I appreciate it. The number, if you want to join us here, is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You guys had brought up in the discussion during the first hour about Brics, talking about North Korea and China, some of the most oppressive countries on the planet. North Korea generally considered the worst, I think, if you look at like the index of economic freedom, for instance, North Korea is down there at the bottom of the list, down there with Venezuela.
On all of them?
Yeah, it pretty much is. It's like down there with Venezuela, basically. And I think Venezuela ranks higher than North Korea only because you can actually get some statistics from Venezuela from independent sources, and North Korea, you just have to take whatever the state gives you. So you have no idea what's actually really going on there from an economic standpoint unless you can talk to somebody who's managed to escape. But every now and then you do hear news about what is allegedly going on in North Korea, and this one caught my eye recently. It's from the Express over in the UK, express.co.uk. Headline, Kim Jong-un facing revolt as North Koreans call for the U.S. to attack their country.
Whoa.
Though quietly and behind closed doors, North Koreans are turning against Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un in what could see the country crumble. North Korea is described as the Hermit Kingdom, the world's last fully fledged autocracy. It is presided over by Kim Jong-un, the 39-year-old supreme leader who controls every minute detail of his people, from their being able to travel and wear leather coats to their food supplies and choice of haircut, as you pointed out earlier, Bonnie.
No, you pointed that out. I just was like really sad about that.
No, I pointed that out.
Oh, you pointed it out, but it wasn't me. I never heard of it before until tonight.
Now you know.
It just made me sad because like I tried a new hairstyle tonight just because I felt like it, and just the idea that you're not even allowed to do things with your own body in that country is very sad.
Yeah, you can't. I'm pretty sure you can't wear blue jeans in North Korea, if I recall correctly, as well. But I could be wrong about the detail. Like there's certain types of clothes that are just
country club.
Yeah, they're not allowed.
Just kidding.
No one can leave North Korea, and very few can enter. But there are rumbles, murmurs that things might be changing. North Koreans have lived well below the poverty line for decades. The country's infamous famine lasted for 4 years between 1994 and 1998. And is perhaps one of the most gruesome and heartbreaking tales of a struggle for survival, one which saw stories of cannibalism and pure desperation. Of course, it's worth pointing out the reason why they had a famine is because communism.
Yeah, happened in China too, with the cannibalism. Lily
Tang was talking about that, wasn't she?
She said in Sichuan, where she grew up, people obviously couldn't bear to eat their own children, but they had to eat something, so they would trade dead children with their neighbors so they could eat each other's children. And
that's about as ghoulish as you could possibly get.
Awful.
It's crazy. I'd never heard that before.
So, yeah, communism fails. It fails every time. And it usually fails in a spectacularly disastrous manner of just unending destruction and death.
And it's not the politicians that are going to pay the price unless you're Ceausescu.
Yeah, no, they eat well, typically.
Yeah, they eat well. The Ceausescu success story was a beautiful one.
What is that?
They dragged him and his wife out in front of a brick wall, and they just shot him to death. And
who did?
The military, actually.
Is this Russia?
This is Romania.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you can talk to Virgil about that one if you ever run across
So he
him.
was the, president or something?
Yes. Yeah, he was the communist dictator of Romania for decades.
Was it a coup? Was it a military coup?
Yeah, when it all fell apart, they famously were. It was all videoed for the world to see. They dragged him and his wife out in their fur coats and their opulence, and they dragged him out into the streets and just cut him down. Like 5 or 6 guys. Just
Until
gave him
then,
squad.
though, he ate really well.
He was. He died with a full belly, no doubt.
The country is at a turning point. Its economy continues to shrink, shortages of crucial items are growing, and the population is no longer entirely ignorant of the outside world, thanks to the advent of the internet and social media, despite those things being controlled by the state. And of course, as you know, we've talked about people smuggling drugs into prisons here in the United States, right? That's a possibility. It happens all the time. You can get drugs in prison. It shows the futility of the war on drugs, right? Like if you can't stop drugs from getting into your own high security, maximum security prisons, then how could you ever expect to stop drugs from getting in
people's houses
to the rest of the country? Yeah. And so same thing's true in North Korea. You just have to think of North Korea as the prison, right? So there's barbed wire and there's guard posts and you're literally living in a prison country. You can't just leave it. And in order to get things in from the outside, you do what the prisoners do. You smuggle those things in. And luckily now you can smuggle flash drives in places where the sun don't shine if you need to. And then the few people that do have devices that can accept, a flash drive would then be able to watch a television show from South Korea, for instance, or a movie from the United States or whatever. And so this literally is something that people do, is they smuggle in flash drives into North Korea. You'll get probably executed if you get caught doing it or thrown into a prison labor camp, but it happens. So there are increased efforts by neighbors to expose their former compatriots to life outside. In 2020, North Korea further cut itself off from the world after the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. It sent an already isolated country into the depths of the backwaters. A recent BBC investigation found that the situation in the country is the worst it has been since the 90s, and the fateful famine, with vital supply routes cut off and increased interference in people's lives widespread. 3 ordinary people were secretly interviewed by the broadcaster with the help of the publication Daily NK, which collaborates with a network of sources in the country. The North Koreans spoke of fear that they will either starve to death, as did their ancestors, or be executed for even the smallest flouting of the rules. Some even admitted they longed for an attack by the United States in order to put an end to the tyrannical regime.
Well,
among the people interviewed included a woman living in Pyongyang, which is the capital, a construction worker living near the Chinese border, and a market trader in the north of the country. The woman in Pyongyang said she knew of a family of 3 who had starved to death in their home. Given the name Ji Yun to protect her...
So recently? Even though the
sounds like she's talking about
famine's supposed to be
recently. Yeah. If there is a famine going on in North Korea, the North Korean government is not likely to announce it, right? So you would have to find out from people who have escaped that something like that is going on. She said, quote, "We knocked on their door to give them water, but nobody answered. The authorities were called and went inside to find the family dead." Chan Ho, the construction worker who also was given a fake name, said food supplies are so scarce that 5 people in his village had died from starvation. He said, "At first I was afraid of dying from COVID, but then I began to worry about starving to death." In 2020, North Korea stopped importing grain.
That's kind of crazy to think even North Koreans were sitting around like scared of COVID. That's crazy.
Well, the North Korean government denied any kind of existence of COVID for some amount of time in the beginnings of COVID. Then I think at some point they changed their story about that. So for a while, COVID didn't exist in North Korea.
And if you couldn't get any good information and you know that, I guess I could see them being afraid that like, oh, China's finally done it. They're trying to get rid of all of us. And because at the very beginning of COVID, I wasn't scared of COVID because of a cold. I was afraid that they weaponized something crazy and released it to kill us all. I thought the zombie apocalypse is happening or whatever.
Hey, this house, once upon a time, Ian's laughing already, had a brown handle on the entryway. I would spray that thing. I would follow these guys around like preschool children. I sprayed the top of Chris Wade's head with Clorox water because they were coming in. Who knows where they've been? I was spraying down everything, and I turned that brown door handle blonde over a few months. You want to talk about freaking out about COVID when it first hit? Nobody else is,
But you were scared of it for like the same reason as me. Like, they have done it.
When I thought it was,
Yep.
This is it.
I thought that, this was it. Like all the
they had all those videos from China. You remember all those fake-ass videos of people like keeling over, which was probably just straight-up propaganda, right?
Probably.
I never saw it.
You never saw those?
I never saw them.
That was very, very early on.
Right in like the first week or two, right?
Yeah. Me and my friend were sitting in his driveway like the end of December 2019. And he pulled up a news story and said apparently like 9 people died of some new virus in China. And I was like, oh my God, that's creepy. What if they're going to do something with this? And it wasn't like really big until like 2 weeks later.
I was on my way to Costa Rica late November, and I was already like arming up with, tons of, I had like a really world-class face mask that I wore everywhere. And I remember walking into JFK. I flew out of JFK, and like the TSA followed me around
because you had a mask.
Because I had a face mask, and some random guy.
It was not okay then.
I don't know who he worked for, but he was like one of the airline employees, but he was friends with all the TSA people, and they're all looking at me really suspiciously. And he just walks up to me. He's like, "Hey, why are you wearing that mask?" And I was like, "Well, there's a new disease coming out of China, and I don't want to get it." And he just starts laughing at me, and he starts laughing at like he just got done telling them he figured that's why I was wearing it, and then I verified his suspicion, and they all looked at me very, very suspiciously. On the way back from Costa Rica is when the news started to break worldwide that this is, it was already out, but people don't pay attention to anything. You know, like if it's not rubbed in your face by the mainstream media, you don't know about it. We do, but average people don't. And finally, there was a Swiss couple sitting on the plane next to me, and they looked over at me and they said, "We wish we had a mask as good as yours. We want to go home." Like they were afraid of everything. So it really started to hit while the 1 week that I was in Costa Rica.
So traveling during that time would have been creepy.
In 2020, North Korea stopped importing grain from China. It also stopped buying fertilizers.
Wait, I just want to point out, is it really, really smart that Ian was never, ever scared? Or
I bought him a face mask. I went to Home Depot and cleared out every N99 mask they had and brought it. And I was like, "Ian, I got one for you too." And he's like, "I'm never going to wear that. Just take it back. I'm never going to wear it." And he was stone-faced, dead serious. He's never going to wear it.
After like maybe a month of it being really big, okay, supposedly San Antonio was one of the places that one of the ground zero people in China that was American got shipped back, and they were allowed to come to San Antonio. And a big story happened that apparently they didn't pay attention to him, and he got to walk around North Star Mall right by my house and was touching things. And everybody started really freaking out, and that was probably the beginning of March or the end of February. So why did I bring that up? I can't remember. Okay, so at that time, I was freaked out for about a whole month. Me and the person I lived with at the time were always checking the death rates in each country and stuff like that. And about a month into it, I started saying, I don't know anyone who's gotten it, and I don't know anybody who's sick. But before that, I would wear a mask everywhere. I had this little old chapstick that I would use to punch in the number onto my gates to get into my apartments instead of touching it. Even though I was touching the chapstick every day, I don't know. And I couldn't see through my glasses because I didn't have contacts because I'd have the mask on and gloves at H-E-B, the grocery store.
Oh, wow.
I would just take off my glasses and then be basically lost. I couldn't see either way.
But China can export a mean flu, but can they export wheat?
Well, apparently they can, yes. But the North Koreans stopped importing the grain that China was willing to export to them. They also stopped buying fertilizers and machinery needed to grow food in 2020.
Just denying that they need it?
I have no idea what the official reason for that was. It's not entirely clear, says the Express, if Pyongyang is truly desperate for money, as reports suggest Russia has secured deals with the country for things like commercial aircraft, raw materials, and commodities in exchange for weapons and munitions. These goods, however, seem not to be reaching those in need. Kim continues to pump money into North Korea's nuclear arsenal, with 2022 witnessing a record number of missile tests. If you want to comment, you're welcome to join us here. We can tell you more about people getting pretty tired of the domination over their economy and their lives in North Korea. Is there going to be a revolt finally?
Only their military would revolt.
There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Everyone needs to get a justice shed. So you have a place to throw that little juvenile delinquent you caught loitering out on the street corner. This is not rocket science, people. I just call up my neighbors, Frank and Terry. We get out there with baseball bats, fishing nets, and we knock that suspect out. And we toss him in our justice shed. We just start dealing out some shovel beatings. That's democracy, people. That's the biggest benefit of the justice shed, people. You are in charge.
Our justice shed was all filled up, so we created this justice cage. It's just as good. These guys, I think we caught them shoplifting, and this is my daughter's boyfriend.
Look, if you don't have a yard big enough to place a justice shed in, go out and get yourself a justice barrel. I don't care. The important thing is to take control of your safety by any means necessary.
This is the Onion News Network.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. Twitter has threatened to sue rival Meta over its new Threads app, according to a media report. Threads has been downloaded now more than 30 million times, less than 24 hours after it was launched. FSN Silicon Valley correspondent Ira Spitzer reports.
In a letter published by multiple media outlets, Twitter's lawyers accused Meta of using trade secrets to build the microblogging platform Threads. Meta's new platform appears to have capitalized on user dissatisfaction with Twitter since polarizing billionaire Elon Musk bought the company last year and instituted a series of chaotic changes. One competitive advantage that Meta has over Twitter and other would-be competitors is that Threads accounts are linked to Instagram, a platform that already has more than 1 billion users.
Secret talks between the US and Russia have taken place to try and end the war in Ukraine, according to a US media outlet. NBC News is reporting that the group consisted of former senior US national security officials and Russian officials, including Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, and that they met in New York in April. They reportedly discussed how to end the war in Ukraine and what to do about territory captured by Russia during the conflict. An aide of former US President Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty in a Miami federal court in the classified documents case. Walt Nauter faces charges that he helped his former boss hide top-secret documents that were taken from the White House and stored in Trump's private residences. FSN's Benji Hire reports.
Walt Nauter made his initial court appearance alongside Mr. Trump last month when the frontrunner for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination pleaded not guilty to 37 criminal counts for allegedly retaining national security documents and obstructing justice. Nauter, though, lacking a lawyer licensed to practice in Florida, was not arraigned that day, and his arraignment was postponed for a second time later in June. He's accused of 6 counts of conspiracy to obstruct justice, false statements, and withholding and concealing documents.
Americans may want to start thinking twice about drinking water from the faucet. A new government study found that toxic forever chemicals may be lurking in nearly half of all US tap water, as FSN's Tony Waterman reports.
Researchers from the U.S. Geological Survey collected more than 700 water samples over a 5-year period from across the country, including from both private wells and public supply tap water. They found that about 45% of those samples contained at least one PFAS, more commonly known as forever chemicals because they never break down in the human body or in the environment.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join the show if you want. The number is 603-283-6160. We're talking about the latest from North Korea. We haven't done a North Korea story here on Free Talk Live in some time. And the claim, because that's all you get really in North Korea, is just people making claims. It's hard to get any real evidence of what's actually going on. There's a purported potential revolt that may be brewing behind closed doors in North Korea. They say Kim Jong-un may be facing a revolt as some North Koreans are calling for the United States to attack their country in order to liberate them, I suppose.
I'm sad that they live in a fantasy land where they think the United States stands up for what is right.
Yeah, well, they, of course, if you believe what the people say who've escaped from North Korea, the United States is the great Satan to the people of North Korea. Purportedly, they're the ones who are attacking North Korea all the time, and that's why the power goes out constantly in North Korea. The United States is attacking the power grid there. It doesn't have to do with the failure of communism and central planning. It's the United States government who is sending in, attack squads and bombing or whatever it is that they're doing.
Those interviews with those people saying that they hope that the United States attacks kind of shows that maybe most of them don't believe that. Or a lot of them, at least, don't believe that. Because they were like, we wish the United States would attack. And
it is a good question of how many of the North Koreans believe what the government says. And that's another thing that it's really hard to get a handle on, because you can't just go down into the streets of North Korea and ask people questions, right? Because they're not allowed to tell you the truth.
How did those interviews come out?
Secretly. The BBC had contact with, what's the organization? Daily NK, which is a publication that reports on North Korea using underground correspondents who are in North Korea. So they found some people through Daily NK that were willing to talk on the condition of anonymity, and those are the people that they did the interviews with. But you can't just go onto the streets with a clipboard and a pretty lady and ask people a bunch of questions about, what's life like? How you liking Kim Jong-un? You can't do that stuff. Because if you tried it, you would just be lied to by people. So you may be talking to individuals who do not believe the government, do not trust Kim Jong-un, want to see an end to the regime, but if they say anything like that, then they could be rounded up and put into a death camp. So it's like they're going to tell you if you were able to ask those questions, they would just simply tell you whatever the official government line is. And you would have no way of actually measuring what the true undercurrent of upset might potentially be.
How do they have so many people if it's such bad conditions? Like, how do you...
I mean, have you seen India? There's a ton of people there. The human animal is fairly resilient.
There are people in India whose job it is to go down into manholes, blind, with no light, into raw sewage.
Oh, God.
To unclog these giant drains, and that is their job. And they hold their breath while under, not water, but raw sewage until they swim down in there, and then they swim back up out of the manhole cover, and that is their job. Human-animal resilience is right.
Yeah.
They will do whatever it takes to stay alive. Humans are really dangerous monkeys. Whenever I see that meme about, I don't know if maybe you've seen it, but there's a meme that shows this perfect sunny day neighborhood with perfectly mowed, manicured lawns.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, I think it's actually a pro-gun meme or something, but it says, I have guns because this is an anomaly.
Like this in the world.
Yeah. Like this whole, prosperity and carefree thinking type stuff is an anomaly. And it really is an anomaly. Like that hasn't existed throughout time. And the only reason it probably ever really did come into existence is the really hard work of people who were free to do really hard work on their own and keep what they earned and figure out how to spend it the best way they knew how and develop communities around that type of thinking.
So, without an actual famine, you will see the population of any place continue to grow, right? Just because it can subsist on relatively little. And without a famine situation, you still have relatively little. With famine, then you're literally eating grass and people are dying. And what they're saying here in this article is they may be entering similar conditions now in North Korea, because you do have stories about people starving to death in their own homes, and so that is an indicator that the famine may be back. But again, it would be very hard to gather what's really going on because there's no real means of reporting on North Korea, with the exception of the occasional rumor or whatever it is that people claim. Myung Suk, one of these three people that they spoke to, the market trader, used to own a relatively booming medicine business, earning enough to keep herself afloat. She now struggles to feed herself and her family, so she started to sell smuggled medicines. It would prove to be the biggest risk of her life.
There is really underground markets in even the most closed down of economies anywhere.
Of course. In fact, that was when we did have the people from Liberty in North Korea that you mentioned come to Keene and speak. They were doing a speaking tour all around the country, and we invited them here. And they came because anybody that's willing to listen, they're willing to talk.
For sure.
And they were talking about I think it's a documentary entitled The Jangmadang Generation, or it might be a book, one or the other, maybe both. But Jangmadang means underground market, basically, or black market. And they were talking about how, at the time at least, now whether this is true now, I don't know, but at the time, I was giving Kim Jong-un credit because he was looking the other way about these black markets, because they're illegal, right? Like if you're selling underground medicines or you're selling underground whatever food,
that's the definition.
Yeah, you're breaking the law. And so they were letting people know that these things were happening without really any penalty. And the reason was supposedly because Kim Jong-un knew that the state system was failing people. He couldn't imagine this. Like we talked earlier about how Kim Jong-un went to college in Europe. So the idea being that, let's just speculate that Kim Jong-un isn't as much of a monster as his father and his grandfather were. He was raised, he's 39 now. So in the 1990s during the famine, he would have been a teenager. So he wasn't, unless they completely kept him from it, like the story of the Buddha, where he was completely cut off from from seeing the horrors of what was going on with the people of his country. If he was aware of it, then he may have internalized that at some level, and then when he took control of the country, the theory was that, well, maybe he's looking the other way on purpose. Maybe the black markets are being allowed to operate because he knows this is how people are eating, that this is how people are making money, this is how people are feeding their families, etc. And that's kind of like the theory. The theory being he was put in when his father died, but not necessarily because anything besides the fact that he was his father's son, right? And now he's got to deal with the party people, right? The Communist Party that is in control in North Korea, who are also very powerful individuals, right? Like the military, generals, and whoever else is the high upper echelons of the Communist Party there, many of whom may be as old as his father or, grandfatherly kind of ages, people who've held these positions for a very, very long time. He's coming in as the new kid, the chubby little son, who's, what's he going to do? Like if he actually wanted to change things.
Well, is he just a puppet?
He can't, right? He can't.
Yeah.
So is he a puppet? I don't know. And this is all speculation. He may be as much of a monster as his own father, but he couldn't end communism, right? He can't just. He's not the god to the people of North Korea as his grandfather is. They haven't had that kind of propagandizing surrounding him.
Is all his family dead?
His dad and his grandfather are dead.
But he's got uncles and a sister and.
I think he put his uncle to death at some
point. I heard that they fed his uncle to some dogs or something.
Yeah, that happened.
Does he have brothers?
I don't know. I think he does have.
He's got a sister, but I've heard the sister is even a larger psychopath
cold.
Than he is.
Yeah,
she's
supposedly.
Ice cold.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, like
did
a
she
monster.
go to school outside?
I don't know her story.
I believe so. I believe she did.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, but yeah, I don't know. So anyway, that's like the theory, right? Like that he was allowing the black markets. He wasn't cracking down on them, knowing that they exist, just allowing them. I don't know if that's still true. I don't know, what the interactions are between him and these Communist Party people, but that was the theory. So anyway, let's continue with this story. So this woman was saying she was smuggling, or rather selling smuggled medicines, and she was caught. She had to bribe an official with, quote, money I didn't have. I barely got away with it, she told the investigation. With new clampdowns, Myung-suk has been monitored by the state ever since. In what is a blunt yet risky admission, Chan-ho, the construction worker, blamed the international community for not challenging Kim, going as far as to say he wished the United States would attack his country. He said, quote, the U.S. and UN seem half-witted. Only with a war and by getting rid of the entire leadership can we survive. Let's end this one way or another. Myung-suk agreed, saying if there was a war, people would turn their backs on our government. That's the reality.
That's not how good revolutions occurred, though. They
come from the
have to
outside,
do it.
you mean?
It's never going to happen from the outside. I mean, in the American Revolution, the French kicked in because the French had a vested interest, right? They hated Britain with a passion. So it was easy for Ben Franklin to approach the French and say, "Hey, we can use a little backup on this if you don't mind." So they ran static. The French ran static for the U.S., the American irregulars.
Did they actually fight on the American land with us?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, there were French legions, and I mean, there's places all over the Northeast called named after French generals and stuff like that. In New York, we have within 10 miles of each other, we have Fayetteville and Lafayette, which are named after the Marquis of Lafayette, who committed a huge battalion of troops to fight the revolution with the Americans.
So think about the mentality, and I think you're right about this. Like, it has to be up to the people to get rid of these control freaks.
Yeah, not trying to be mean to him, but it's a little irresponsible to be like, well, you guys are stupid. Hurry up and bomb us.
Yeah, but you got to think they've also been raised as children their entire lives.
Yes, that was the point I was going to make. Think about the mindset of the average North Korean who has been propagandized heavier probably than any other people on the planet. They are so dependent, right, on the status quo.
Americans are too.
I was going to say, and that's coming from us Americans.
That is. These guys are probably worse off. I mean, they're so dependent and so afraid. I mean, Americans are afraid too, but they don't really realize it, right? Like, they know they're paying taxes, but they don't really know, like, they haven't really thought really hard about what's going to happen if they don't.
It's a really
problem.
It's a sad situation when somebody does know, they figure that out, they start to get a little fired up, but then they have kids or have something else in their life that they care about, and then they suddenly become really scared, and then they pull back from all of that.
I want to know how bad it has to get before the average person finally takes stock and said, "There's no one coming. It's up to us. It's up to me."
I don't know if that'll ever happen in North Korea, because the people there are so afraid. Remember, there's punishment for you and your family if you get caught working against the government. And so it's not just, it would be one thing if you were just putting your ass on the line. And it's a whole other thing when if you were willing to take the risk and then you think, oh, wait, they're going to kill my children. They're going to kill my grandmother. They're going to abduct my family.
They're going to erase my family name.
Yeah. They're going to torture them. They're going to put them in a prison camp at best. They may kill them. The best case scenario is they'll go to a hard labor prison
I think the
camp.
best would be just being killed.
Yep. The best would be killed.
That's a good point.
Instead of starving is a terrible way to die.
Well, they did say that you can pick bits of corn out of fecal matter at the prison camp in order to sustain yourself if you're really hungry.
Oh, my God.
That's what some people have reported who've managed to get out of these places. So you can understand why somebody would say to themselves, well, I sure do hope someone else comes in and solves our problem for us, because they are living in a state of fear that we can't even imagine, right? Like, it is hard to really imagine to empathize with that person, because as bad as we've got it, it ain't that bad by comparison here. And I say that as somebody who's under federal lock and key, basically, under bail conditions. So going on, Ji-yeon, the woman who lives in Pyongyang, wanted nothing more than to live in a society that didn't go hungry and spy on one another. Governments around the world have done little in the way of communicating with Kim. The most progress was made under former President Donald Trump when he visited the demilitarized zone in 2019, in the process becoming the first sitting president to enter North Korea. We talked a lot about that here on Free Talk Live when it happened, because it really was a momentous kind of occasion. Donald Trump deserves, I think, a lot of credit for trying to make some inroads there.
He was making friends with Saudi Arabia, North Korea, and Russia.
Yeah, it was an epic move on his part. It was a really memorable thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't end up panning out in the long run. They didn't end up ending the Korean War officially, which was what they were supposedly working towards. And of course, Trump's out of office at this point. Maybe he'll rekindle that if he gets reelected. But anyway, while many at the time believed it could be a moment the North Koreans were granted greater freedoms, others simply claimed it was a PR stunt for Trump that bore little for the country's people. The visit was fleeting, and no progress was made in its aftermath. North Korea has few, if any, allies. It has ties to 164 independent states, but China is recognized as perhaps its only real and significant partner, as the pair share an 840-mile-long border. Even then, many say China only puts up with North Korea rather than encourages it. Wang Chenjun and Richard McGregor, writing for The Interpreter, said a combination of China's desire for peace and stability, tensions with the U.S. and Taiwan, the uncertainty of South Korea's position, and competition with Washington are all factors Beijing considers when propping up the Hermit Kingdom. Sokil Park, who represents the Liberty in North Korea group, Link, which I mentioned earlier, which supports North Korean escapees, said there is, quote, a devastating tragedy unfolding in the country. For now, North Koreans struggle to survive the day-to-day, unable to look to the future. So I wouldn't say there was a whole lot in that particular story about a revolt under Kim Jong-un, but I hope that they have something. I hope something happens for these
North
people.
Korea seems like a social experiment of epic proportions to find out how far into just being a kept animal human beings can be.
Mm-hmm.
You see every once in a while these dogs that are so emaciated, they're tied up to a stick, and they could bite their owner. They could bite and kill and eat their owner and get a nice fat meal, but they won't.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if this is just a test to see how far the human animal can be pushed on a broad scale. Because that's all North Korea is.
That's what I was thinking about, like the Chinese lockdowns. It was so irrational. It was like the end of COVID.
People into their buildings.
Mm-hmm.
It was
and then the buildings would catch on fire.
Yep.
People would get COVID and not that many people were dying. It obviously, first layer, it obviously wasn't to stop the spread of COVID, and they didn't really believe that. I think that it was, like an experiment, like you're saying, or just a way to scare people so bad into not, this is what we can do and we'll do it again type of thing.
In other North Korean news, apparently, according to Fox News in a story published yesterday, North Korean citizens are now going maskless in large groups, indicating the country has rolled back their intense COVID-19 restrictions.
Dang.
So their blanket mask requirements have been ended as of the beginning of July. So,
Whoa.
A little bit of good news.
2023, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, the U.S. federal government just ended its state of emergency, didn't they, within the last few months on COVID-19? So, anyway, if you want to comment on North Korea, by all means, feel free to weigh in here. I've always found it to be just, fascinating, like a train wreck is fascinating. You have to look. It's absolutely just horrifying, the things that have allegedly gone on over there. I've read some books, at least one book about it while I was in jail. And then I've seen a few different documentaries, and it's something else. It really is something else. If you want to really learn what the worst of the worst is in the world right now, then look to North Korea. China's bad, Russia's bad, North Korea's worse than both of these places. And we only know a fraction of the story because we only hear so much from the people that are able to escape. Let's go to the phones. We have Bad Slave on the line in New Hampshire. Go ahead, Bad Slave.
Oh, thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Hey, it occurs to me that the failure of Trump to actually make much progress with North Korea was by design. I'm pretty certain that the enemies of the U.S. are cherished in a lot of ways, whether it's China, whether it's North Korea, Venezuela.
Cherished by whom?
By the U.S. government.
Why?
Like the deep state?
Yes, of course, the deep state wants to keep the conflict going forward. I mean, they, if we really achieved peace across the globe, that put a lot of friggin' deep staters out of business.
Yep.
Big time.
Mm-hmm. I think in order to get rid of the deep state, you first have to get rid of the state.
Indeed.
If there is a state, there will always be a deep state.
Well, and they're just kind of, less, in the front of things, less obvious to us. They've got a huge bureaucracy, even if you somehow discount the deep state. But the deep state is, it depends on there being an enemy.
What I really think that the deep state are master psychologists, like people who know how the human brain works, and they aren't afraid of running out of power because they know that as soon as something starts to happen, they know how to spin the situation on the media, or, what propaganda to put out, what situation to make seem like it's happening, to twist everyone's minds about what's happening and make people, right now it's just like ignore it. Or if something big was happening, like a mutiny in North Korea, they'd start operation like, there's this other a group of neo-Nazis that are in the North Korean ranks.
Right.
You don't want the neo-Nazis to win, do you?
Right.
Hey, thanks, Bad Slave, for the call tonight. I got to disagree with him on this. And I'm with you on this one, Matt. That's the state is the problem. The deep state, to me, is just this, whether they exist or not, is just a political distraction.
Yeah, I think they exist, but I think whenever you have something like a state, whenever there's a concentration of power, the worst people and the biggest dirtbags who are power seekers are going to do whatever it takes to fall into that power, get themselves into that power. And that can be as benign, which it's not really benign, as your local cop.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be as bad and as egotistical and self-serving as a politician. But the truly bad ones are the ones that want to control the politicians and the cops. And those guys stay off the radar. But they are absolutely in the depths of the deep state. We're not talking about even corporate dirtbags that are getting into the government. These are probably the same old central banking institutions that have been running the show for hundreds of years at this point. And I wouldn't doubt it if most of them are related. They all know each other and stuff. And, there's a system.
Well, deep state or not, the thing that Bad Slave said at the end of that call is true of the state, and that is that war is the health of the state.
War is the health of the state.
So whether you believe in there's a deep state or not, they still want to have the enemy. They still want to have the bad guy.
Sure.
They still want to have the other that they can point to and use as an excuse to go to war, whether it's the Nazis or whoever the bad guy at the moment happens to be.
I don't know if you're kind of like just anti-Bad Slave's call because the word deep state. I'm the one that brought it up, not Bad Slave, but I was just saying it because that's the most common term. Like people used to always say, you mean the Illuminati? But it's just Trump made it popular, but it's this term for a group of people, not the visible puppets, but the ones that, like, who tells the media what narrative to start pushing when they all start pushing the same narrative at the same time. It's not Joe Biden.
Right.
And
there is such a thing as fifth-gen warfare. And every once in a while I get to bring that up on the show. Fifth-gen warfare is basically psychological warfare. They're very good at it now. And when I say warfare, I mean a military is involved. There are definite warriors, boots on the ground, committing this, and it's heavily planned. It takes a certain skill set to be able to enact it. And they're doing it.
We got more coming up here. If you want to weigh in, the number is 603-283-6160. and the latest attack against the Free State Project. We can talk about it coming up.
The Shire Free Church offers a sanctuary to those seeking an escape from state churches.
The Shire Free Church is an interfaith, diverse group of people that may not share identical theological beliefs.
As a member in or minister of the Shire Free Church, you are a sovereign individual and may be the faith of your choice.
We don't claim to have all of the answers.
We are open to all peaceful people.
We want to learn from each other.
What unifies the Shire Free Church and its diverse members is peace,
love,
and liberty. There are many paths to God, one for every individual.
The Shire Free Church does not define a specific path beyond these parameters that must be your foundation.
Peace as your way.
Love as your guide.
And liberty as your light.
Learn more at church.shiresociety.com.
That's church.shiresociety.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The U.S. and Russia have held secret talks to try and end the war in Ukraine, according to the U.S. media outlet NBC News. It's alleged Russia's foreign minister was part of the discussions in New York. FSN's Simon Marks has been following the developments from Washington.
It's very controversial because many of the names involved in these conversations are well known in the corridors of power and the think tanks here in Washington. And of course, the White House has indicated ever since the Ukraine conflict began that there is only one aggressor and that the Biden administration will stand shoulder to shoulder with Kyiv. So there is tremendous interest here in what the White House knew. Tonight, President Biden's national security spokesman has said these discussions were not encouraged or engendered by the Biden administration. And he said, we were not supporting them in any active way. He repeated the phrase that U.S. officials have used for over a year now, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. In other words, the U.S. wouldn't encourage peace talks without Kyiv's full knowledge and participation. Now, some of the figures involved in these discussions with Sergei Lavrov and other Russian figures have attempted to build bridges with Moscow in the past, notably Tom Graham, a former National Security Council official. One former State Department official told me earlier today that the reports of these conversations were outrageous and suggested the participants should be ashamed of meeting with a Russian foreign minister who has been targeted by U.S. sanctions. So this is all very controversial indeed.
Stocks in the U.S. slid on Thursday amid increased investor anxiety over the state of the economy and the potential for rising interest rates. With more, here's FSN's Benji Heyer.
Another middling day for the markets, in spite of better than expected jobs data just released, which shows private sector positions increasing by almost 500,000 last month, double the estimate and the biggest gain since July of last year. The official June payrolls figures come out on Friday. A promising number there, whilst good news for growth, may prompt traders to hedge their bets on the Federal Reserve pursuing a more aggressive policy in an attempt to cool the economy, hiking interest rates again after a brief pause.
Twitter has threatened to sue rival Meta over its new Threads app. Threads was downloaded more than 30 million times in the first 24 hours after its launch. In a letter published by multiple media outlets, Twitter's lawyers accused Meta of using trade secrets to build the microblogging platform. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, some perspective on the latest violence in the Middle East. Thousands of people have attended the funerals of 12 Palestinians killed during an Israeli military operation against a refugee camp in Jenin, while in Israel itself, an investigation continues into an attack on a shopping district of Tel Aviv by a car that rammed pedestrians, injuring 8. Today, is it even possible to talk about a peace process, given that no efforts are being made to advance one? Emily Hilton is UK Director of Diaspora Alliance, an international organisation aimed at combating anti-Semitism and its politicisation.
What is happening on the ground in Palestine and Israel is basically a situation where there is no motivation for Israel to end its occupation. The reality on the ground has shifted so much that we now have a situation where settlements are basically permanent structures. Whilst there is obviously sort of a dramatic shift to the right with this government, you've seen sort of the reality of occupation has been in place for over 56 years. I would hope that people would see the real need and urgency of not allowing sort of even further drift in sort of far right extremism, which has sort of taken hold of the Israeli government. However, so far, we're yet to see any of that accountability really be put into action.
And she points to new legislative moves in the UK to stop public bodies from boycotting foreign countries, as one example of evaporating accountability for the Israeli government's actions. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. A report alleges that the U.S. and Russia have held secret talks to try and end the war in Ukraine. U.S. stocks slide amid increased investor anxiety over the state of the economy and the potential for rising interest rates. And Twitter threatens to sue rival Meta over the new Threads app, which has already been downloaded more than 30 million times. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reports.
Welcome back to the war for the White House bunker. A troubling new report from the Shuttleworth Institute shows that due to Facebook, every potential candidate for the 2040 presidential race, no matter how smart or accomplished, is now completely unelectable. I'm standing in the 2012 Democrat with Jason Copeland. Jason, walk us through this.
Yeah, we're looking at really a political crisis. The Democrats are currently searching basements and creepy backyard sheds in search of somebody who was kidnapped at a young enough age that they have no online presence.
That is a very interesting tactic.
And the GOP has been looking at this young man. This is a 20-year-old Jeeves Jones. He's currently living in Appalachia with his fundamentalist Christian grandmother and no electricity.
So Jeeves has no Facebook page?
Jeeves does not. In fact, he's completely illiterate. And the Republican Party has begun grooming him for a possible candidacy in 2036.
All right. Well, at least there's someone. Thank you, Jason Copeland.
Thanks, Andrea.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You're invited if you want to join the show. We're kicking off the third hour here. The number for you is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We've been talking about North Korea here a little bit tonight. Also, the Free State Project, the migration of liberty-oriented people, libertarians, voluntarists, liberty-loving anarchists that are coming here to New Hampshire. As the three of us have done, we would not know one another, likely, if it weren't for the idea of bringing like-minded, freedom-loving people together to the same place.
Best decision I ever made, and I came with almost nothing when I got here.
And you've done well.
I've done pretty good.
Yeah.
It's been a slow, hard build, but you know what? It was the best thing I ever did.
Well, few things worth doing are easy.
That's true.
So we can dig in a little bit as the latest hit piece has come out from one of the Free State Project obsessed counter groups that are out there. There's a group of haters, essentially, that really don't like the Free State Project, and they released a report recently.
Let's not overstate the size of this group. This is a small contingent of really ridiculously left, hardcore. And I think the leaders of the group are receiving a mysterious working wage paycheck from somewhere too.
Yeah, the theory is a George Soros funded organization. Granite State Progress, I believe, is behind this group, and behind Granite State Progress is allegedly George Soros. This is coming from a group called Granite State Matters, which is
I thought it was the same.
I believe it is the same. My understanding is that essentially Granite State Progress's podcast. They decided they were going to put out their own show to reveal the truth about the Free State Project. So we've got some news about that coming up here. But let's go to your phone calls and thoughts. First, Renee is on the line in Louisiana. Go ahead, Renee.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know what you think about self-defense. I mean, it costs, and there's governments, and there's people out there like, human history is full of things that's happened. Like the beauty of the Viking invasion was there's no self-defense for their victims. You know, they got away what they want till finally self-defense was initiated. Yeah,
I think he's saying it was beautiful for
them. It was not for the darn victims.
Yeah, the domination.
So
I didn't think he thought it was great. I just thought it was a weird word to use.
Yeah, well, I mean, they got away with it so easily and so successfully because until self-defense appeared, and then their age was gone, and then you just have plain old small-time piracy because the Vikings were pirates. But anyhow, there's many schemes for self-defense. It costs money, governments do it. They got good governments and bad governments, but you got to have it unless you want to be like Liechtenstein and if I could say, the Jehovah's Witnesses love Liechtenstein because they don't believe in joining the military. They hate the military. But Liechtenstein lives under the umbrella of Austria, other European countries, and the Pope being there to behest the other European countries to protect the existence of Liechtenstein. So Liechtenstein doesn't have an army, does.
Okay.
Well, I don't think that you need the government to have a military.
You could have a private defense force, is what you're saying?
Yeah, and everybody being armed themselves is a militia, like the military is what militia means.
Renee, I think you said you wanted to ask a question about self-defense, and then you just kind of went off about it. So I'm not really sure.
I want to feel what y'all got to say about that, because once again, before there was the Wagner Group and Kellogg, Brown and Root and Blackwater, there was Rogers Rangers. They were hired by the infrastructure, the colonial infrastructure.
You're talking about mercenaries.
Yeah, they're mercs.
Yeah, but Rogers Rangers was one of the earliest, hired by the Americans. But the problem
the Pinkerton
with
men, I think, were
group,
private investigators, private cops, right?
Yeah, but the problem with private militaries is they don't have big weapons to go against state-sponsored weapons and armies. I mean,
some of the most dangerous fighting forces are small, heavily trained, huge pains in the butt, and sometimes they're not even heavily trained. They're just armed, and they have focus, and they have an axe to grind. Those are the most
recently.
dangerous
Look at
guys
Afghanistan. I mean, you got essentially a group of cave dwellers.
The CIA in America, though.
It's a really rude way to call them every time you bring up Afghanistan, Ian.
I mean, it's not untrue in some cases. You've got a group of relatively...
Some of them may have dwelled in cages
unsophisticated.
or caves,
You've got a group of unsophisticated fighters who are willing to put it all on the line, willing to suicide bomb if need be, setting up IEDs, running trucks with explosives into them into key points, and running out the most well-funded, largest military on the planet after 20 years.
A few times they did the U.S., they did Russia.
They did Russia as well. Yeah, you're right about that.
And that was self-defense.
Can I comment about Afghanistan?
Yes, sir.
In world history, Afghanistan's been invaded about...
a million times.
I believe 7 times. Alexander Macedon, 3 times with the British. The British had one very successful attack on Afghanistan. They went in there, they raided, they came out. One time they went in there, tried to occupy, they got watered down like the Russians and the Americans. And, of course, you had Russia, you had America. I believe that's about it. The British 3 times, Alexander Macedon, America, and Russia. With America and Russia, you had opposing forces. They would have most probably still did it, but you had opposing forces helping them, like the CIA helping Afghanistanis, and then the Iranians helping the Afghanistan against the Americans. But the thing is, how would you deal with private armies if people don't want to show up? I mean, you still have to have government, somebody say, look, you signed up or you pay taxes or you live here. We need somebody here to come help us out.
They would just have an agreement for why they joined, like you'll get this out of it, and it would have to be something that they would want.
I don't think
like
that you
maybe
would...
even just defending themselves would be the thing they wanted.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we're talking about national defense here, right? Like that's
Yes,
the question.
Yes, we
okay,
are.
so if we're talking about national defense, we're talking about people actually defending their own homes and the homes of their neighbors and their families. We're not talking about sending a military squad over to some other country here, right? So if we're talking about national defense, then I don't think you're going to have a problem with people showing up.
The United States has I just got done saying in the break that I'm pretty sure North Korea has the largest standing army in the world. It's like 1 million standing infantrymen, but that's an organized army. If you want to talk about truly the largest military force in the world, by far, no contest, is the American people. Like there
gun-owning
American people. There are literally I think 110 million gun owners in America, and most of them have like several. I mean, the AR-15 owners of America could arm everybody else in America that isn't if they really needed to.
One last thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not that religious, but according to the Bible story, one of the reasons the Israelites got overtook was nobody wanted to show up to man the borders. Like, you might have had some generations, maybe up north, but there's some people out there that just don't care. They're not going to go do their share. Well, then
you're not going to do a great job if you force them into military service.
And the other problem
if they
is,
don't care.
Why live among people who you think don't care? Like, just go move to a place where lots of people say they care.
Yeah, I mean, the only other solution besides voluntary solutions is coercive solutions where people are drafted and then forced to fight against their will. And I think if you talk to people in situations where they had to fight alongside draftees, they would tell you they would prefer to fight without those people.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to take somebody who doesn't want to fight and then try to force them to into conflict. So voluntary solutions are the only...
Vietnam was bad, but World War II was great.
Tell that to the people that died.
I think that's what he's trying to say. He's agreeing with you because Vietnam, there's a bunch of drafts. There were people who were drafted.
They drafted people in World War II as well.
I think World War II was less that. Like, more people wanted to get in the fight.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the point I was telling you before. Sad. If there's an invasion into the United States, or there's an invasion into Louisiana, or wherever, whatever city you live, then people are going to be into defending their own homes. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
I don't think California would care. I mean,
well, then that's their problem. So what?
My advice to Californians: if there's anybody who cares about their own well-being, especially if they're Liberty people, they should not be in California at this point. Right. They should be as far as they can possibly get from California, i.e., New Hampshire.
If the people of California aren't willing to put their own defense forward to some sort of attack or invasion,
enjoy your sunny weather,
then you sure as hell shouldn't go over there to try to bail them out.
I was there one time. It was pretty, but I'll never go back.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Renee, for the call tonight. I appreciate it. Let's talk to Sarah. She's in New Mexico. Go ahead, Sarah. Sarah? In New Mexico. Going once.
Got us on speakerphone, Sarah?
It's too bad. I think she had a really interesting topic tonight. She'll call back. Let's talk to Skeeter. He's in California. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Skeeter.
Hey, I heard you guys. Well, I heard the new guy demonizing politicians, but the true evil is brought about perverted incentives of the voters, since that's who they're catering to. I say democracy is a type of market experiment, even though it's doomed to fail. I also have criticism about your strategy of secession, but I'll bring these topics up for another debate at another time. I
don't really like how he just keeps going and going and going. Like, did Matt have something to say about that thing he was criticizing what Matt said?
Matt's not new, by the way. Matt's been here many times over years.
He hasn't had to deal with the mosquito
But Skeeter is new to the show, so he's
I'm new
never...
to Thursday nights. I've never been on a Thursday.
You've been on before here.
On a Thursday?
Yeah, you have.
I?
Before Jay Noon was in, you were pretty regular.
Oh, that's right.
On
Thursday was
nights,
the night, right.
But Skeeter's new to the show, so... All right, Skeeter. Yeah, I get what you're saying, Bonnie. I don't know if there was much
He was just rambling.
He
just said 3 different topics.
Yeah, I don't know if there really was much for Matt to respond to in that.
He said that the
comment.
government isn't the problem, it's the voters.
It's really the system that perverts both. But so I kind of look on the voters and politicians more favorably, less cynically than he does. And so I really was hoping to bring up some clarification and closure about my government is a monopoly on justice statement. So I'm reading at the moment. And dispel your mischaracterization that government is simply a monopoly on violence or aggression. I didn't think you'd fight me so much on it, so I didn't prepare my statement with a lot of detail. So
now you're just going to read from a book?
It's more efficient because, there's things you wanted more detail because I didn't think you'd fight me on it. So I made it as brief as possible without detail. And I didn't think
what book are you reading from?
This is my own writings.
Oh, your own writings.
Yeah. I just did it today.
No, you see, this is worse because it's like we want to have a conversation. If you're just reading, it's worse than when you just call into monologue.
Yeah. How many sentences are we talking about here, Skeeter?
It's only a few. Right? Okay. I mean, it's going to be quick. It's quick enough for you to just process, and you can.
Okay, and you're going to argue that government is something besides a monopoly on violence here?
Yeah. And I'll explain to my other statement when I made monopoly on justice and why it's a better characterization. So let me explain the matter and put this matter to bed, right? Government isn't a monopoly on violence or aggression. It's a monopoly on justice. Legislation, that means legislation and enforcement. And it isn't a monopoly per se, meaning monopoly isn't what truly defines government, meaning monopolistic competition isn't inherent in how it provides a good or service. Government is only a monopoly in the goods and services that the market fails to provide, namely public
false.
Goods and
That's ridiculous claim.
The market provides all kinds of services that the government would like to monopolize, but in some areas does not.
The market would provide these things if the government didn't have the monopoly on using violence, and that's what everybody means when they say that. Now you understand, Skeeter, right?
I suspect he doesn't understand.
Don't you change your view, or like because you see evidence like counter to what you used to believe, or are you just going to keep rambling the same thing no matter what you hear come from us? And at that point, I don't see the point of having a conversation with you.
I just got to transition into listening mode. So I was just into reading. I wasn't even listening to what I was saying. So I don't even know what I was saying at that point when you challenged me. But let me just finish, and then remember this point and bring it back if you can. Okay? Because I'm not even listening to myself. I'm just trying to get my points across.
Then how is this more efficient? This is a more efficient way to have a conversation if you can't even hear what you're saying.
You get the other people ranting time. I'll be quick. I'm really quick. I'm self-aware, right? So government is not.
Okay,
is only
you just said you weren't. But go ahead with your book.
Government is only a monopoly in the goods and services that the market failed to provide, namely public goods and grossly unprofitable projects. And you can make a case that most of the public goods it provides are really unprofitable projects, like protecting IP, for example. The private monopolies inefficiency.
Like checking what, for example?
Protecting IP. He said.
Yeah. So the
intellectual property.
Yeah, that's.
Well, there's no need for anything like that. We don't need to have intellectual property at all. And this is the thing that we stopped you on, and now that you're not reading and you're hopefully actually having a conversation with us, this view of a market failure, and that's why the government needs to take over, is just ridiculous. I mean, there's just absolutely nothing that the market can't do better than the government monopoly system.
The market can protect IP. If we really wanted it to.
It could try.
BIP.gov.
Yeah, but that's not going to stop somebody from copying something and sharing it.
No, for sure not. But there's when you buy something, you can make an agreement that if you buy it, you won't do X, Y, Z with it.
Yeah, and that sounds fair. Yeah,
you break that agreement, you've committed a crime, even in a free market.
Well, you'd be liable for whatever the agreement said you'd be liable for.
Sued or something.
In that case.
So therefore, the free market can even provide for IP, which is granted. IP is garbage.
I want to, since he said he wasn't listening when I said something earlier,
Oh, no, he wasn't listening while he was reading.
Yeah,
so
but
he wasn't listening to his own statements.
He said that, but he also said that's why he couldn't hear what I was saying.
I see.
He said he had to switch out of speaking mode and into listening mode. So I just want to point out, one thing that you said is just false, that the government provides things where the market can't provide it. Well, that's like saying that there was a society before governments and they were trying to do, everything, but they just couldn't provide for military or policing and things like that, and that's just false.
If there are things that people want, someone will step up and provide that.
It's the typical control freak viewpoint. It's the typical socialist, centralized,
really
the
is.
power viewpoint is, all these market failures, so we need to have a centralized
To prove
government.
what he was saying, we would have to have a past we could point to where there was like no government controlling people, and we just couldn't figure out how to do things like run a currency, have a police force, a military force, and he can't point to something like that, so it's just false.
You could even run a charity in a free market. It doesn't even have to be for money in a free market. You can do things charitably.
Hello.
I don't think he was listening to a word of that.
Maybe
Go
you should
ahead,
hang up on him
Skeeter.
for yelling hello on the radio.
Are you not listening to my comments? I didn't even disagree with you about the society doesn't need protection for IP. You didn't even listen to my comment. You just
We listened to where you said that there's market failures. And
let me read that.
no, you don't need to read it again. This would be the third time that you've read it. We heard what you said, Skeeter. Why don't you get specific and talk about the market failure that we need the government to solve?
I gave an example of an unprofitable project that the government takes on, such as protecting IP. So I've said taking on the responsibility of protecting IP.
Then
And
we
all
talked
Matt
about
said was that a private company could do the same thing.
Yeah, we explained to you, Matt explained that can be done without using the government, and it doesn't have to be quote-unquote unprofitable at all. In fact, a lot of the things that are out there trying to protect IP was developed by industry, not government, like copy protection.
I'm just so upset because I'm thinking we don't need this protection for IP. That's what I'm saying, right?
Okay, well, we would agree with you on the idea that IP or intellectual property shouldn't even exist. But the reality is there are people that do think that that's a good idea. They do want to have some sort of protection for their ideas. And I say let them try. Let them do whatever they want to do about that. And those of us who support open source and who support copying without, asking for permission will continue to support those things. Thanks for the call tonight, Skeeter. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. I mean, generally we don't want people just reading passages from books on a show because it is very hard to, stop down and have a conversation about those things. But at the very least, if you're going to read something, even if it's brief, you should at least know the words that have just come out of your mouth and be able to defend them, especially if you purportedly wrote them, as Skeeter was saying, he wrote that passage.
He's self-aware.
Yeah. All right. Let's see.
Statement.
So the Free State Project under attack constantly by the enemies of liberty here in New Hampshire. The Free State Project, for newer listeners, is the migration of liberty-minded people, thousands of them coming to the same geographic area, this relatively small state of New Hampshire with 1.4 million people, and then working towards more freedom in our lifetime, hopefully. That's kind of the idea. It's been going on now for roughly 20 years since New Hampshire was chosen. I believe October of 2003 was when New Hampshire was chosen as the destination state for those of us who ended up moving. I moved in 2006. Matt, 2012?
2013. July 31st, 2013. I'm going on my 10 year right now.
Nice.
Crazy.
And Bonnie in 2021.
Very early 2021.
So the haters really hate the Free State Project.
Hate it.
They really hate it because
venomously.
Because it's so successful. Because the Free State Project has been tremendously successful. Arguably the most successful libertarian anything on the planet. And I'm including whatever Libertarian Party things that have happened in the last 50 years that they've been around.
Liberland?
Liberland is a neat thing, but it hasn't really gone anywhere. But the Free State Project's only been around for 20 years and has had more success than, I would say, the entire Libertarian Party combined in 50 years.
Oh, for sure.
And so that's why the haters are zeroing in on the Free State Project. That's why there are groups like Granite State Progress that have an entire section designated towards following the Free State Project, obsessing over the Free State Project,
labeling us a hate group,
falsely labeling Free Staters as a hate group, etc. And they have themselves a podcast called Granite State Matters that wrote a lengthy screed about the Porcupine Freedom Festival and the Free State Project. So we'll just jump into it here. The Free State Project, they say, headline, Free State Project update, making New Hampshire an anarcho-capitalist homeland. The Free State Project has 92,000 followers on Facebook. That's 1 for every 15 people in the state. It's a good sign for a group that intends to turn New Hampshire into their libertarian homeland. Now, why the number of Facebook followers matters, because they're almost certainly not people that are here in New Hampshire per se. It's people from all over the world that are following the Free State Project, but regardless. He said, the person who writes this says, it's hard for residents to take them seriously when they change their legal names to Nobody and Dan Taxation is Theft Berman, who doesn't even live here,
Yeah, he doesn't live here, and that's pretty rude to just, insult Nobody simply because he changed his name to Nobody.
The reason, of course, he changed his name to Nobody was so he could run for governor as a Republican to oppose the current incumbent, therefore giving people the opportunity to vote for Nobody.
If you can't look past somebody's name to find a reason to respect them, that says a lot about you.
This is the level of attack that we're looking at here, Bonnie. The number is 603-283-6160. If you want to join the show, we'll continue with the hate piece here, the hit piece, in moments, and you can join us as well here on Free Talk Live. We got more coming up.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing. To be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. Physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project early movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The U.S. and Russia have held secret talks to try and end the war in Ukraine, according to the U.S. media outlet NBC News. It's alleged Russia's foreign minister was part of the discussions in New York. FSN's Simon Marks has been following the developments from Washington.
It's very controversial because many of the names involved in these conversations are well known in the corridors of power and the think tanks here in Washington. And, of course, the White House has indicated ever since the Ukraine conflict began that there is only one aggressor and that the Biden administration will stand shoulder to shoulder with Kyiv. So there is tremendous interest here in what the White House knew. Tonight, President Biden's national security spokesman has said these discussions were not encouraged or engendered by the Biden administration, and he said we were not supporting them in any active way. He repeated the phrase that U.S. officials have used for over a year now, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. In other words, the U.S. wouldn't encourage peace talks without Kyiv's full knowledge and participation. Now, some of the figures involved in these discussions with Sergei Lavrov and other Russian figures have attempted to build bridges with Moscow in the past, notably Tom Graham, a former National Security Council official. One former State Department official told me earlier today that the reports of these conversations were outrageous and suggested the participants should be ashamed of meeting with a Russian foreign minister who has been targeted by U.S. sanctions. So this is all very controversial indeed.
Stocks in the U.S. slid on Thursday amid increased investor anxiety over the state of the economy and the potential for rising interest rates. With more, here's FSN's Benji Heyer.
Another middling day for the markets, in spite of better-than-expected jobs data just released, which shows private sector positions increasing by almost 500,000 last month, double the estimate and the biggest gain since July of last year. The official June payrolls figures come out on Friday. A promising number there, whilst good news for growth, may prompt traders to hedge their bets on the Federal Reserve pursuing a more aggressive policy policy in an attempt to cool the economy, hiking interest rates again after a brief pause.
Twitter has threatened to sue rival Meta over its new Threads app. Threads was downloaded more than 30 million times in the first 24 hours after its launch. In a letter published by multiple media outlets, Twitter's lawyers accused Meta of using trade secrets to build the microblogging platform. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Matt, and Bonnie joining you here tonight. And we're talking about the Free State Project, the migration of liberty-minded people coming here to New Hampshire. There's already been some tremendous victories that we've had here because, hey, as it turns out, if you actually concentrate liberty-minded activists in the same geographic area, you can accomplish things that the other liberty people spread out in the other 49 states could never even dream of coming to close.
They couldn't even conceive of what we're doing here in their own place.
And you'll get an overview of some of these victories, like the gun freedoms that we have, the medical freedoms, political freedom victories, also best practices for moving here to the Free State and finding housing from the folks over at Porcupine Real Estate in their upcoming series of webinars that they're going to be putting on. They have been putting these things on. In fact, you can watch previous episodes of these webinars on their YouTube channel, which is called Porcupine Real Estate. These are the people you want to talk to about finding a place to live here in New Hampshire. If you're a libertarian, if you're a voluntarist, liberty-loving anarchist, you should be talking with Mark Warden and the crew at Porcupine Real Estate. And these webinars are a perfect excuse where you can sit down, you'll get a presentation, you'll, I'm sure, get to ask questions of people who have been here for some time. They know the community. They know the lay of the land when it comes to real estate. And they can help you.
And sometimes you just want to spend your money with other libertarians, and there you go.
Perfect excuse to get started up here in New Hampshire. Get in touch with them by going to move.freetalklive.com. I know that's our URL, but it'll forward you right over to the Porcupine Real Estate website where you can get signed up for the upcoming webinars there at move.freetalklive.com. They are free to attend, by the way. You just have to get signed up for them. Move.freetalklive.com. Let's go to Sarah in New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Sarah. Sarah.
Oh, something may be up with her phone.
Oh, that's my bad. I had her turned down. Now we have you, Sarah. Go ahead.
Are you with me?
Yes, we got you. Go ahead.
I'm the speakerphone. Okay, am I off?
No, you're on. You're on the air right now.
You sound great.
Okay, yeah. I just anyway. I was listening to the news. And it turns out the human trafficking was the most profitable for the cartels.
Oof.
It was announced on the news.
Yikes.
So I guess don't they're responsible for the bringing in the illegals? What are they involved in? The cartels?
Drugs.
Aren't they mostly involved in that?
Well, they're involved in anything that's illegal, okay? So the reason why a cartel would want to get into a specific business is because they can make an inordinate amount of profit on that. They're not going to be likely selling legal products because there's a ton of open market competition in those areas, but things that are prohibited, such as people crossing borders, guns, and drugs, cartels are likely to get involved in those things. So what you're saying is the reports that you were hearing about said that they make the most profit on smuggling humans.
Well, no, the human trafficking, is that forced prostitution?
Not always.
That's how I understood
it could be that. It could be lots of different things. It could just be moving people from one place to another, you know.
Right.
Is that what they're talking about? But the human trafficking is the bringing in the illegals and selling the women when they were here. And I heard
it could be that.
Caller.
They don't typically mess with like American citizens. So, because Sarah said selling women that are here, probably not.
Yeah, I don't know how often the cartels are involved in that. I have not personally heard a lot about it, but that doesn't mean it isn't happening. Certainly, they are involved in the actual trafficking of humans across the border, and it is not uncommon for those people to essentially become victims of the coyotes or the cartels or whoever it is that's bringing them over, because in return for the transport to the United States, they may become essentially indentured servants or slaves in some way. Whether that's sexual or not depends. They could just be working out on a farm or whatever the job happens to be that they're forced into, and they essentially have to work, or they'll be sent back, or possibly killed, or whatever. Maybe they'll hurt their family, that kind of thing. So that I suspect they're saying that that's particularly profitable, because if you have a human slave, then I guess you're profiting from every hour that they're working for you.
I think you misunderstood Sarah's first thing. She didn't say that the thing that cartels make the most money on is human trafficking. She said the people who do human trafficking, cartels do the most of it. Right, Sarah?
Well, the announcement was that they make the most money human trafficking.
That's what I thought.
What I'm understanding is they're prostituting these people that they bring over. That's how I am understanding it. You know what I mean? So that I kind of believe that is true. I
find it hard to believe that prostitution was making them more money than just selling coke,
drugs, and guns and stuff.
Yeah, that stuff is easy to move. Prostitution, that seems like it'd be a lot more moving parts and costly. I mean, there's a lot more overhead with prostitution, it seems. I mean, you have to feed a person and make sure they stay alive.
Wouldn't it be called sex trafficking if it was prostitution as opposed to just human trafficking?
I think sex trafficking would fall under the banner, under the umbrella of human trafficking.
Right.
It would.
So human trafficking, that's how they label it. You know what I mean? That when they say human trafficking, that's what it means as prostitution.
No, I don't think it always means that.
No, yeah, it means both things, sir. It means prostitution, like selling some human's body, and it also means just moving someone. Like there were this in San Antonio, like last year, there was this semi-truck that was found abandoned, and apparently they had paid somebody to drive them out there, but something went wrong, and they locked them all in. They left them all locked in there. And it was in the summer, and they all died in the 37 people in the back of this semi.
Horrible.
Just got
they couldn't get out.
Abandoned in San Antonio heat, which is really hot.
Sarah, thanks for the call tonight. And yes, according to Wikipedia, human trafficking is the trade of humans for the purpose of forced labor, sexual slavery, or commercial sexual exploitation. So yeah, could absolutely be just straight up. You're working on a farm. You're working, in a factory. You're working. You're doing lawn maintenance or whatever, right? Like there could be all kinds of forms of human trafficking. So thank you, Sarah, for the call tonight. We go to Dr. Butt calling us from New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's see. Dr. Butt is fine, but it's actually Major Butt. I go by my rank.
When did it turn to doctor? Just because I made that joke
He
one
got
time?
an upgrade, I guess. I think it was you, Bonnie, that did that.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I am a butt doctor. Hence, Caduce commented today about having the world revolve around me. Actually, I do a lot of work with black holes, Dr. Butt, and the whole galaxy revolves around me. Caduce.
Got it. So you're a galactic doctor. Okay. What else?
Yeah, a galactic butt doctor, working on them black holes.
Mm-hmm.
So
we got the joke the first time.
Well, you may have an IQ of 177, Ian, but some of your listeners only have an IQ of 77, and so therefore the repeating is valid.
Fair enough. All right, what else were you calling about?
And notice I haven't even mentioned some of the co-hosts. That's a joke. Don't get mad. I know Matt got it. The rest of you might not have.
The rest of you.
Oh my God! So rude.
So yeah, well, why so rude? Why should I not be rude? That would be a change from the 15 years I've been calling you. How old were you?
Have you been calling this show for 15 years?
I was born 15 years ago.
No, you aren't. You haven't been calling that long.
Yeah. Well, what year was Adam Kokesh on the radio in Albuquerque?
God, I have no idea.
Because I called several years before Adam Kokesh was on the radio in Albuquerque.
You called our show?
I did. I called once, and it sounded so rinky-dink I didn't call back for a couple of years.
Okay.
And then I gave you a second shot when Adam was on the air locally and reintroduced me to you.
I think it was like 2009 or 2010.
Wow. Okay. All right. That's 15 years.
So long,
I didn't know he did a radio show.
Long. I can't say They were, so I'll say, a long but time.
Indeed.
Anyway, serious stuff. There's a flaw in you guys' thought process that I've been trying to communicate to you for a long time, and the fact that I haven't gotten it through to you, you can blame on me and not on you. So let me try it one more time.
Go for it.
You're having a debate with Skeeter, and you have this debate with a lot of different people, but it just came up again. Skeeter was faulting the voters, and I actually agree with Skeeter because it lends to my point here, and that is that the system of government that was set up for you is not actually where the flaw is, and not actually where the problem is. And the Skinner guy, I believe the Skinner guy said the quote about the Constitution that can't prevent the stuff is worthless. However that quote goes, Ian probably has it memorized.
Spooner. Who is Skinner? I thought she was talking about the
Constitution.
psychologist.
See, I have a
one thing or another.
179 IQ,
There you go.
so I know that's Spooner.
Yeah. Anyway, so the problem is, the actual problem is, there's another quote too that comes into this, that our system, and I forget who this is by, and I'll paraphrase it, that our system is unsuitable for a population that's not moral. There's a quote that surrounds what I just paraphrased, and that is the problem, is that the voters have failed to utilize the quite good system that was set up for them. The voters have failed to enforce that system, and therefore criminals, this part you agree with, therefore criminals have come in, a gang, organized crime, has come in and taken over your government.
But
now,
the system was designed for organized crime.
The system was literally designed exactly for that purpose.
I just can't believe that voters are actually voting in.
No, you're not correct.
People say government doesn't work. Government works exactly as it was designed to work, and that is.
Then here's a test. Here's a test. If what you say is true, and you want to secede and set up some other form of government, how are you so sure that government
we don't.
will not
I
fail?
don't have any desire to set up a government after I succeed. After I secede.
Thank you, Dr. Butt, for the call tonight. I appreciate it. Yeah, those of us who are at least in the liberty movement that want to see secession would prefer to not have a government at the end of that particular activity. We do understand that it's still likely.
Yeah.
The New Hampshire, state of New Hampshire government people will still be there. We will likely not simultaneously abolish them in the process of seceding from the United States. However, at the very least, the New Hampshire government people are local to us. We know where they live. We can go out front of their house and protest if we want to. We can hold them much more accountable than people who are 1,000 miles away in Washington,
in front
D.C.
of the governor's house before. I also flipped him off on October 13th, the day of Footloose getting arrested for saying amen.
The system is immoral, to come back to what he was saying prior to that. The idea that somehow a moral people could make a system of democracy a moral thing is just...
Yeah, moral people understand that there's no such thing as human authority over another human to tell them what they can and can't do with their bodies.
Right, and we understand that democracy is just two wolves and a sheep deciding on dinner. So it doesn't matter if you put a bunch of moralists in charge of that particular process.
Yeah.
If they're
Not
okay
to mention
with
the
using
subjectivity and the subjectivity that swirls around the word morality. You know, everybody has a different morality. You know, what does that
mean? Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, I suspect it's quite different between Skeeter and Dr. Butt and,
for sure.
and those of us
totally
in the
different.
studio.
You know, there's 8 billion different definitions for that term. You know, someone was saying. You know, it was Cody Brown. He used to live across the street here, Cody. But he's opposed to the non-aggression principle, not because it's a bad principle, but because there's no such thing as morality particles. You can't sprinkle morality on someone, have them suddenly be moral according to you. It's a different thing for every single person out there. So
I think that the non-aggression principle just doesn't actually answer every single moral question, and that's fine. It's just the bare bones. It's like, we can get along, we can live in this society together if you can at least believe this. If I have other little sensibilities that you disagree with that offend your sensibilities, we can still live peacefully and work in a community together as long as you also don't believe that you can shoot me over not agreeing with my sensibilities.
Yeah, it starts off with an a priori statement like, most people don't want to be attacked by other people. Agree with me there?
Seems pretty true.
Most people can agree with that. Everybody basically can agree with that. Everything past that statement is minutia.
Yep, and I don't like how there are some people that really believe that, like, the things I consider morality beyond the NAP, the non-aggression principle, are what's going to bring liberty or what's not going to bring liberty, because they don't know that, and there have been many people try to convince me, like in Twitter fights or something, that if everybody isn't their religion, basically, then we're going to not end up having a free country because, oh, well, the other day was just OnlyFans. Somebody was arguing that if OnlyFans is okay to our society, then there's no way that we can live in a free society because blah, 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 something about his own morality, and I just don't like that. I don't like that idea. I think if you don't want to live around people that would be okay with having an OnlyFans, you should be free to move away from them. You should be free to not do business with them.
Move to Florida or Texas where they'll pretend like they don't like OnlyFans.
Right.
I don't think this person should move. I think he just needs his mind changed.
Then they'll secretly access it when their spouse or whoever
But one thing I want to say about Davis' thing right before we move on is just, I don't want to take away the personal responsibility aspect of what he was saying, that it's like partially the people's fault. I just think that it's so annoying that he points, not annoying, but it's just that I think it's wrong that he points to like the voters specifically. Mm-hmm. I think the people are putting up with immorality that the government is perpetuating. Ultimately, it's not like some elites out there controlling you that are making you live unfree. It's your own decisions.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is the system attracts people who are corrupt and people who are corruptible.
It was framed up and invented by people who were corrupt.
Sure.
George Washington was
terrible,
an absolutely garishly bad human being. And as soon as he got into power, running on this history of being against taxation, he immediately put a tax in place on the whiskey distillers. And guess who owned the largest distillery and was one of the only ones that could afford to pay that tax? His distillery.
I did not know that detail.
He was taking out the competition.
Yeah, he's taking out the competition.
I'm shocked.
The other day.
He's a dirtbag. George Washington, our country's daddy, was a scumbag.
I believe it. So back to the story here from the Granite State Matters group, the attack piece against the Free State Project, the latest one. They say, but they're serious about their plans. Free Staters have been moving to the state for 2 decades, and when presidential candidates start showing up at their fair, they think they're nearing their goal. And then they point out the different people that showed up, like
Never
Robert
thought of
Kennedy.
it as a fair.
Yeah, she's been out of shape because Robert Kennedy is a Democrat.
Yeah, well, she also mentions the Republicans like Vivek Ramaswamy, and then another Democrat, Dennis Kucinich, apparently was there. She says that goal, or he, whoever's the author, doesn't say, that goal is to make everyone in New Hampshire free of rules and free of laws, also free of government-issued currency, public schools, public libraries, zoning regulations, speed limits, drug laws, and environmental regulations. Sounds like she's done her research here. It seems pretty accurate.
As usual, she's advertising magnificently for us.
This is must be the same person that made this meme that went around a little bit ago. It was Free Staters cutting off branches of a tree, and it said something like New Hampshire Public Good at the top, and they were cutting off things like environmental funding, public school funding, and you know, they were trying to say that, make that meme as if it was a bad thing, and we were sharing it because it was awesome.
Yeah. I love it when they do this for us.
Cutting down the branches of a bloated government.
It would be up to individuals to come together and reach a consensus on which private company they want to pay to build and maintain their roads, bridges, and sewers. Quote, oppressive democracies would disappear and the free market would resolve all difficulties through laws of supply and demand.
Yeah, we hate sewer workers.
It's a flavor of libertarianism from one step up from anarchy. It's called anarcho-capitalism. The model they hold up for their society is the Wild West. In Lancaster, New Hampshire, at the private campground where Porkfest is held, anarcho-capitalism ruled. Some practitioners prefer the name agorism. Agora is Greek for marketplace. Agorism denies that the government has the right to ban, legislate, or tax any consensual exchange of goods or services. They believe they have the right to smuggle people into the country, own prohibited weapons, employ children, sell drugs, procure sexual services.
Wait, the Democrats are really, that was the end of that beginning statement, just that we shouldn't have the right to smuggle people into the country? A Democrat saying that? It's a little shocking.
Yeah, that's
people
what
should be allowed to cross the border.
A lot of Democrats support restrictions on borders. I mean, look at what Biden does. I almost called him Biden. Look at what Biden does.
Yeah, he's terrible on the border.
Shoppers at Porkfest were offered discounts for using cryptocurrency or gold coins, but the FSP's Keene, New Hampshire poster child of cryptocurrency was not present. Ian Freeman is currently serving 10 years in prison.
Where did she get that?
For money laundering, conspiracy.
He was present.
Are you like a government robot put here to do the show while the real Ian is in jail?
Serving a prison sentence of 10 years for conspiracy to launder money, operating an unlicensed money transmitting business, and tax evasion. But yet here I sit.
It's all public, too. That's the thing about like people who, it's one thing if you're just a person on the street and you're misinformed about Ian Freeman's situation. Like, I don't blame you at all. But if you're writing a report about a thing, it's all public. It's available to find.
Let me tell you something. I want we're always trying to get people to move to New Hampshire for their own freedom and to help us here get even more freedom. Make this even better than it already is.
Right.
This Granite State Matters, Granite State Progress, whatever they call themselves in the minute, they're always advertising for us like this. They make us like it. This sounds like when they're complaining, it sounds like something out of a dream for a libertarian that's living in New York State. And I'll tell you what, for those of you who do decide to move to New Hampshire, even if you just come to scout it and check it out and see what it's all about, which I did this week in 2010, when you get here, one of the most fun things you can do, you can go to a Democrat meeting where Zandra Hawkins is speaking, and I'm not kidding. Because you walk in there and it's wall-to-wall 75-year-old Democrats, and she's basically an actual commie infiltrator on probably Soros's payroll, on somebody's payroll for sure. This is her living. And she's talking to them and trying to turn them against, anything freedom-oriented, and definitely against Free Staters. And you sit in that audience and you stand up and you ask her hard questions. Dress as a Democrat, wear a flannel shirt and some khakis, and look like you pulled in a 20-year-old Volvo, and you got an Obama sticker on your car and it's aging. Act as if you're one of them and stand up and ask questions about why you should hate these people, or how would an increase in this tax help us? And
I think this person who wrote this is actually not Zandra, but
there's more than one of them. But Zandra's kind of the ringleader,
name,
Yeah, she's the ringleader.
I had to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the story, and the copyright on the claimed copyright is from Jeannie's Journal, and I think Jeannie Deitch is the likely author here. A little bit more. So she says, I'm in prison for 10 years. By the way, for those that are paying attention, you know that I haven't yet been sentenced for the victimless crimes that I was found guilty of at a jury.
That you didn't do.
Yeah, so that's a whole other story. Anyway, laws don't matter. Anarcho-capitalist agorism. Agorism is a plank of the official 2023 New Hampshire Libertarian Party platform, which is run by Free Staters and other anarcho-capitalists. Carla Garrick, another Porkfest speaker, chairs both the Revolutionary Mises Caucus of the New Hampshire Libertarian Party.
That doesn't exist. I don't think that's true.
It doesn't. Yeah,
there's not a Mises of New Hampshire.
And Carla's a Republican.
False thing. Yeah, she's registered as a Republican, I think, yeah.
And she is on the Free State Project board. Yet another speaker was Jeremy Kaufman, which she misspelled. He is a Free Stater who ran for New Hampshire's U.S. Senate seat as a Libertarian. He told the Boston Globe, quote, democracy is a soft form of communism that basically assures bad and dangerous people will be in power.
Based.
My hope would be that you can simply make New Hampshire unattractive enough that if you want there to be a giant welfare state, what are you doing here? And then she's got photographs from Porkfest, which I presume were taken undercover. Tables at PorkFest offered a host of illegal products for sale.
So there was an undercover Democrat there to take pictures? Yes. That's funny.
Could be, or maybe she just snatched them off the web. I don't know. Agorist claimed the right to make any consensual exchange of any goods or services without tax. And then she's got
how terrible.
A picture of what appears to be bags of mushrooms, some bongs, maybe some marijuana.
You think people are selling mushrooms and paying taxes right now in New Hampshire? No one's paying taxes on the mushrooms they're selling, and mushrooms are getting sold.
Right, and by the way, there's plenty of Democrats who I'm sure have taken mushrooms in their time. I'm going to put this one on hold, and maybe we'll continue it tomorrow night, because I know Chris will enjoy this article. There's much more. And out of time for tonight. You can join us between now and tomorrow online over at freetalklive.com. We'll see you tomorrow.
Good night, Gigi.
If you're David, a few well-chosen words can help level the playing field with Goliath. I'm Holland Cook from survivalspeech.com. Recently, I saw a Yellow Pages ad for an appliance repair company, and the headline read, "Why wait for Sears?" If you're going to the Yellow Pages, the Dead Sea Scrolls of advertising, you're ready to buy right now. So this is an attention-grabbing message. And how about the plumber whose radio ad says, "Call by noon Thursday, and we'll be there Saturday."